on ESPN.
I see Dallas and I see Colorado as a different maturation part in their organizations. They seem to be a half a letter to a full letter grade ahead. But then I look at Minnesota. I look at what Winnipeg's going through, what Nashville's going through, what we're going through. So I don't see us being in that group of players starting out, hoping to get the first overall pick. That's not what we're looking at. Now, how far they can take it, I think we should be competitive with the groups, with that, if you break the league into thirds, I hope to be in competitive with that middle third, and I hope to be at the top end of that middle third.
That was Doug Armstrong heading into the season, talking about what his expectations were this year for the St. Louis Blues. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, coming out of the Christmas break, if you had told me on day one that the Blues would be 17, 15, and 1, they would have won 4 of their last 5 games, the power play would be starting to show some signs of life, and they would have scored 4 or more goals in each of those 4 games, I would have said, okay, season's kind of gone according to plan. They're probably right around that area, that range that Doug Armstrong was talking about, and we'll probably be talking about them as, hey, maybe they could get into the postseason this year. Well, all of that is true. And that is where things stand as of today. And Alex, by points percentage, despite everything that I just mentioned, the only team in the Central Division that is worse so far by points percentage than the Blues is actually the Chicago Blackhawks, because this division is highly competitive. And despite all of that, I think there might be an opening here, man. I don't think anybody has pulled away in this division. The Dallas Stars, who are right now the best team in the Central, man, they've hit some struggles in their own path this season. Jake Ottinger has been unhealthy. Their team is a good one, but they're starting that goal suppression style that they've been playing with. Man, they're not suppressing as many goals lately as they've gone up against some of the better teams in the Western Conference. You look at what they did against Vegas, 6-1 loss there. They gave up 3 goals and ended up going to overtime against both Seattle and Vancouver. They gave up the 4 against the Blues earlier before that. 5 against Florida, 4 against Tampa. Ended up giving up 4, losing in overtime against Calgary. Lost in overtime against Vegas. This is a team that is starting to struggle more than they did in the early portion of the season when they were 11-3-1. And they're not alone. Colorado had a player that called out the entire team for not competing hard enough the other night. This division is weird. The Predators have gone up and down and up and down. It's been a roller coaster ride there. The Coyotes aren't ready at this point in their build to be a legitimate contender in the Western Conference. So I ask all of that, Alex, today coming off of the Christmas holiday, to ask you this. Are you ready to get high on hopium?
Oh, let's go.
Are you ready to look at the possibility that there is an opening here in the Central Division for the Blues to sneak
Someone
through?
needs to park that panic bus back into the garage, because Brandon Kiley is all aboard the hopium train, and I'm with him. Look, nobody's scary in the Western Conference right now. That's the only thing I can go off of.
I will make an amendment there. I will say nobody's scary in this division. The Canucks, the Knights, and the Kings, I think, are legit.
But
I think those 3 teams are really good.
But the Knights are 500 in their last 10 games.
I know.
The Kings, yes, the Kings are a very scary team, but the Kings are also hoping that Cam Talbot leads them to the promised land. And sorry if I can't back that. I agree with you. The Vancouver Canucks are a very scary team. We witnessed that firsthand, and they're going to be a team that spends some assets. They're scary. But they've also had their 500 stretch within, I think it was either November or the early portion of December. And when I look at the Central Division, yeah, you've got the top-heavy teams like Doug Armstrong mentioned, Dallas, Colorado, Winnipeg. But you're sitting 8 points behind the Winnipeg Jets, and yes, you lost to those teams both times, and they're on a roll right now. But they also started the season as a 500 team. Colorado, you mentioned, might have internal problems, and they also can't stay healthy. And the Dallas Stars, well, the Dallas Stars always look like a juggernaut, but they never actually are a juggernaut. So, look, I'm not sitting here saying that the Blues are going to be the number 1 team in the Central Division by season's end. But what I will agree with you and get high on that hopium with you
there we go.
is I look at the teams beyond Vancouver, Vegas, and LA in the Pacific, and all of those teams are worse than the Blues. Calgary, Seattle, Edmonton, although Edmonton's turned it on a little bit, Anaheim, San Jose. I look at Minnesota, I look at Nashville, I look at Arizona. You're the exact same team as all of those teams. And if you can get your offense going, if your power play starts to perform a little bit better, and you get a little bit tighter defensively, we're talking about a team that's fighting for third place like Nashville is right now. So, yeah, I won't sit here and act like this team is awful. They were awful, but they figured something out in their last 5 games, and I'm hoping that continues.
Somebody from the 314. And by the way, you guys can get involved, of course. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, you are such homers, and I absolutely love it. Happy holidays. So maybe there's a little bit of that.
You're going to call me, who hosts pre- and post-game for the Blues, a homer?
I would say this, though. I would be talking about the same thing today. If I was in Arizona, if I was in Nashville, if I was in Minnesota, where I'd say, hey, we're the Minnesota Wild, and we sucked for the first, 15 games of the season. I had to fire our coach as a result. But we've been playing better, and the Central Division did not run away from us. They allowed us to still have an opening here, and right now, by points, they are second to last in the Central Division. By February 1st, would it shock you, Alex, if they were fourth? Because I don't think it should shock anybody if they end up fourth in the division by that point in the season.
You're 3 points away and you're 1 game in hand.
The Blues are the same conversation, man.
Yeah.
And, if this team gets to the playoffs, do I think they're going to win a Stanley Cup? I do not. Do I think they could beat any of those teams that we just talked about, Vegas, Vancouver, LA, all of whom are probably going to be sending assets elsewhere to improve upon their current roster by the trade deadline? No, I don't think you're beating any of those teams in the playoffs. But you don't have to. The first thing you got to do is get out of this godforsaken division. Yeah. And I don't think anybody in this division is very good right now.
Right.
And so if they get to the postseason, could they pull off an upset against one of those teams that's in the top 3? Yeah, absolutely. We see it every year, man. Last year, the Boston Bruins, I'm cooking right now.
Your hopium is actually hitting. Go.
Last year, the Boston Bruins won the damn President's Trophy, and they lost against a good, but nobody saw them as great Florida Panthers team. So, weird stuff happens in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Again, I'm not predicting it. I don't think the Blues are going to do this. I think they're more likely to sell off assets at the deadline than they are to become the third place team in the Western or in the Central Division. But, because this division is not very good, there is still an opening there for them to potentially be able to walk through.
You done cooking? That hopium fading away a little bit right now?
A little bit.
92 points is probably all it's going to take to make the playoffs. Maybe less than that, because right now, nobody in the Pacific is pushing for a wild card. It's the top 3 and then everyone else. You're fighting with Nashville, Arizona, and Minnesota for one of those top wild card spots. And 90 points is very doable for a team that has just floated above 2 or 3 games 500. You've never fallen more than 2 games under 500. So this team has been able to stay out of that bottom, that basement. And here's the thing. You've got one asset that does give you an opportunity to win in a playoff series, and it's Binnington. But you got to get there to let Binnington actually try and attempt that. And to get there, you're going to have to find your offense, and you're going to have to tighten up defensively.
I think it's the offense. I think that's really the story of the season. If you look at the way that the Blues win this year, it's by scoring 4+ goals. Now, that is a really hard way to win. It goes back to what happened last year, right? Where if that offense goes stale, if you get a little bad puck luck, you end up going on a potential 6-game slide because you don't have the structure to be able to lean back upon. But because this team now has a top line that it can count on, because Thomas, Kyrou, and Buchnevich have been reunited and they're playing their best hockey that we've seen from them in quite some time, you do have an offense that can contend against some of the better teams in the West. And Alex, I do want to ask you individually, let's go through this real quick. Do you think that Robert Thomas finishes the year with 80 or more points?
Yeah, I think he's in the 90 range.
Do you think Pavel Buchnevich will finish, if healthy, all of this is assuming health, with 80 or more points this year?
Yes.
Do you think that Jordan Kyrou will finish the year with 80 or more points this season?
I do.
So you think that the Blues will have 3 players that finish with at least 80 points in 2023?
I do. And especially if you look at what last year was, you were barely there with Kyrou, Thomas, and the injury bug is what kept Pavel Buchnevich away from that one.
The last time that happened for a Blues team where they had 3 players reach at least 80 points in a single season was 1993. It's been 30 years since the Blues accomplished such a feat. If you look at the teams that have accomplished something similar to this in recent years, man, they all ended up basically getting to 100 points. Over the last decade, every single team that had 3 players reach at least 100 points finished with 95 or more points in the course of a regular season. Now, I don't think the Blues are capable of that. I think they got off to too poor of a start, and I don't think they're deep enough as a roster to be able to get to that place. However, if you look at some of the other teams that were in a similar spot to where the Blues are at in their build, there were some other teams that had 2 guys get to 80 or more points, which is very realistic for this team as well. Maybe they don't get the third. Maybe there's an injury or something. The 2017 Colorado Avalanche did that. Same thing that season for the Flyers and the Islanders. 2018, you had the Panthers, the Oilers, and the Blackhawks. Now, one of those was going in the wrong direction. The other 2, though, were on the up and up. And then last year, you had the Canucks. Alex, I think some of those comparisons are really interesting for the Blues because it is the starting point of those teams in their build. And that's what the Blues are hoping, is that this is the starting point of what their build is ultimately going to become.
Especially like the Vancouver Canucks is the one that I'd like to hone in on, because that's the team that I do see the similar comps with. When you look at the goaltending situation, when you look at how they viewed their team and they needed more structure, so they fired their coach, they brought in Rick Tocchet, and he figured it out, and their best players played up to their potential. You had a 100-point season by Pettersson. JT Miller was the 80-point player, and then you had a couple of other guys come up on the rear. And look at what they went from one year to the next year. That's the probably best comp that you can go with that doesn't have those elite superstars in the National Hockey League like the Blues don't have. Now, they have Pettersson, and I don't think you have anybody that comes close to Elias Pettersson, but if Robert Thomas continues to play this way, you could at least start bringing both of them into the same conversation. If you can get a guy who's got 90 points, you put up 30 goals in a season, and you're eating 20 minutes a night. That's what Pettersson does, and that's what Robert Thomas is close to doing.
It's also possible that you're at the beginning of where you were with Colorado in 2017-2018.
Yeah.
Where at the time they had McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog. Now, McKinnon was 22 years old. Rantanen was 21 years old. Landeskog was 25 years old. And those guys put up 97, 84, and 62 points that year. Maybe that's what you're building. Maybe your version of Gabriel Landeskog is Pavel Buchnevich. Your version of Nathan McKinnon, now, again, not to the same level as Nathan McKinnon. Nobody's that guy. But the only guy with more points this year at even strength than Robert Thomas is one Nathan McKinnon.
Yep.
So that's your equivalent there. And then you look at Rantanen, and your hope is that, at least in terms of the goal-scoring production, you can get that out of Jordan Kyrou. They're not one-for-one players. I think those guys on Colorado are more physical than what you have with your top 3. But points production-wise, you are right now where they were in 2017. They finished that year with 95 points. The year prior, they were at 48 points, finished 7th in the Central Division. You're hoping that, much like that Colorado team, you are on the upswing of what is going to be a sustained period of winning once again. And it will be led by those 3 players.
And that dud of a season that you mentioned, you're hoping was last year for all 3 of them. And now you're hoping that this is that upswing that you're talking about. I love the comp, and it really comes down to those 3, because those are the 3 that this team's success hinges on. And if you see them take that upswing, then you're talking about a team that's going to be up there with Nashville, Arizona, Minnesota.
Everything about this retool always was going to come down to Thomas and Kyrou.
Yep.
It's why your coach got fired, because he couldn't get the most out of Jordan Kyrou. Right or wrong, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it doesn't matter. The deed is done. He is now gone because Jordan Kyrou wasn't producing. Jordan Kyrou is now producing under Drew Bannister, and if that continues, the best way for Drew Bannister to get hired here in St. Louis long-term is by continuing to have those 3 united on that top line, performing at a high level, and putting up big-time points.
Yep.
If you can do that, you're going to win a lot of hockey games, and you're going to be the coach here for a long time to come. So that's the job. And over the next 10 games or so, as these teams start getting a little better, the opposing teams that you're going to be going up against, the level of competition is increasing in a significant way now. You're going up against the best of the best over the next 3 weeks. If they can continue performing at this level, suddenly we're going to be having some different conversations here in St. Louis. Alongside Alex Ferrario, who will be on pregame coverage for the Blues versus the Stars tonight at 6 o'clock right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. I'm Brandon Kiley. We have Bradford Bruns along for the ride with us today. T-Bone out all week with some much-deserved vacation. If you guys want to get involved in the show, the place to do so is the Air Comfort Service text line. It is 314-399-9646. You guys can always watch us on YouTube at 101 ESPN STL. You can get involved in the chat over there as well. But coming up next, Alex, we got to talk a little bit of college football because tonight USC is going to be taking the fields, and they will do so without Caleb Williams. Who's going to be their starting quarterback next year? Sure doesn't seem like they know right now, and there's a reason for that. We'll discuss it next here on 101 ESPN.
We've got your chance to score free tickets to see comedian Bill Burr live at the fabulous Fox Theater on March 21st.
There you go. Figured it out.
Emmy and Grammy-nominated comedian Bill Burr returning to St. Louis this March at the fabulous Fox Theater. Get all the ticket details and get entered to win those free tickets for the show right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
This is exactly where you want to be, listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex and Bradford, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. A little bit of news to pass along. This comes from Gabe DeArmond of PowerMizzou.com. Mizzou getting another running back in on a visit coming up in the month of January. Nate Noel, formerly of Eli Drinkwitz's Appalachian State alum. Nate Noel has played there over the last couple of years, had 3,000 yards on the ground at Appalachian State.
So the Mizzou got the first Noel. Oh. You're welcome.
The hits just keep on coming.
All of you. You're welcome.
You feel good about that?
Oh, are you kidding me? Look, the dad jokes don't stop on Christmas when I do them. They
only
keep
get
rolling.
worse.
Nailed it.
So that is the latest in terms of
Much
the
like-
Missouri side of things. They are preparing right now for the Cotton Bowl, where they will take on Ohio State. Ohio State doesn't seem to have a quarterback right now.
Oh, yeah?
Not just for this game, Alex, but for next year. Nobody's really sure who's going to be taking the snaps for the Buckeyes under center next year.
It seems like a problem.
They ran off Kyle McCord. Now, I don't think Kyle McCord was a particularly great quarterback. I thought he was the weakness of that team this year. They were very lucky, very fortunate that Marvin Harrison Jr. was there, and he was, I think, arguably the most dominant college football player this year that didn't play quarterback. So they're very lucky that they had him. But now they've got a whole lot of uncertainty at the position. And the same is true for a team that we are expecting to watch tonight. USC will take on Louisville, and USC will be without Caleb Williams. Alex, they had a 5-star quarterback behind Caleb Williams this year. They had him committed from last year's class. He decided also to enter the transfer portal. And I think we see this a lot in college basketball. It's become kind of a theme in college basketball where Illinois fans, you can certainly relate to this. Mizzou fans this year, we can relate to it. There are certain seasons where it just doesn't come together. You go to the portal, you hope that you hit on all of the guys, and it doesn't work out for whatever reason. Maybe it's a chemistry thing. Maybe it's you didn't have enough shooting. You didn't have enough size. You just missed on one or two of the guys that you needed, and it ended up where your season didn't come together because of it. Alex, I think we're starting to see that in college football now. We'll see what happens as we get into the springtime. Maybe these places are able to find somebody. They convince somebody to take their money and they can play for them for $1 million next year, right? But as of today, blue bloods like USC and Ohio State are playing a game of musical chairs. The music is getting ready to turn off, and they don't appear to have a dance partner, man. And the last guy that's remaining is Will Howard.
Ooh.
Will Howard was Kansas State's quarterback this year. He has been replaced by Avery Johnson, a very good young freshman quarterback there. And they said, hey, Will, you go take your chances in the portal. We appreciate everything you've done. He is a capable quarterback, but he is worse than Brady Cook. And USC and Ohio State are his two college options right now. And they are desperate to say, take our money, Will Howard. Please come play for the Trojans. Please come play for the Buckeyes. I think the portal, we have arrived at a place with it where blue bloods that miss out on the front end of the quarterback transfer portal will be stuck with something that they did not want at the quarterback position. And because of it, you're going to see a lot of these teams year in and year out say, shoot, we missed out, and now we have no chance of making the college football playoff as a result. That is why I think it, for a fan base like Mizzou, Illinois, etc., I think that is a really good thing for you because it will level the playing field because these 5 stars that are backups at USC, Ohio State, etc., they're hitting the portal and they're trying their opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, the transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh away, and that's what's happening right now. And you're right. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the strengths of the transfer portal, and although this sucks if you're an Ohio State, a USC fan, you're looking at this being like, well, what the hell? This is great for everyone else because it's not the same team every single season.
100%.
And for these college football teams that go to the transfer portal or they bring in that 1 5-star recruit at a certain area and you've got guys in the backup situation, those have the opportunity to go elsewhere. So you better pick the right quarterback, which USC did with Caleb Williams. You picked the right quarterback. But you better make sure it's the right one that's going to be there for a long time because when you lose that guy, when he goes to the draft or when his college career is done, welcome to you not finding the next one in the transfer portal.
Look at Kentucky this year.
Yeah.
They went to the portal and they missed. And it ended up with them not being the same team as a result. They were hopeful that they would end up actually taking a step from Will Levis, what he was last year, that version of him. And it didn't work. Oklahoma, they ended up going to the portal, getting a quarterback, and it worked for them. And this year they win 10 games as a result. Texas goes to the portal. They get Quinn Ewers. It clearly worked for them. Washington, other teams that went there, Oregon, they get Bo Nix out of the portal. It worked for them. If you miss, though, if you go to the portal and the guy that you get that you put all of your hopes on ends up busting or you don't get the guy that you were looking for, you're stuck.
And it's stuck
and you
for
end
a
up missing
good
out,
3
and
years.
it's all bad news, man.
Yeah.
It's all bad news. LSU got Jaden Daniels out of the portal. It worked. They ended up getting a Heisman Trophy winner as a result.
And the really interesting facet to monitor here, guys, in a lot of ways, it amplifies the pressure on some of these big-name head coaches, some of those who are already on the hot seat. Hello, Ryan Day, and the programs at large. Because let's say that you're fighting for the right to be able to secure Will Howard next year. Well, the field is expanding, as we know, the playoff field to 12 teams. If you don't make it next year as one of the Blue Bloods, how much more humiliating is that if you go bust on the QB front?
And think about USC, right? Think about how much pressure is taking place right now on Lincoln Riley out at USC. I don't think he's going to be fired after next season, but if he has another season similar to this, dude, the next year he will be in a win or go home type of a situation for the Trojans. If you don't have a quarterback, we know his defense is going to stink. Lincoln Riley never has a good defense.
Defense always sucks.
So if now you have a average at best defense and your quarterback situation takes a massive step back, well, now you're just a 6-6 football team again, or worse. At USC, that is unacceptable. Now, at places like Ohio State, where the talent level is, astronomical, and they do have a good defense year in and year out, they could still next year win 9 or 10 games and have a respectable season if that happened at Mizzou. The difference is at Ohio State, you can win 11 games. This season was a failure. Ohio State fans are furious. They want Ryan Day gone because he can't overcome Michigan.
Bingo.
And if you don't have a quarterback, and this year I thought they had an average one in Kyle McCord, and he was essentially a scapegoat for losing to Michigan, you're going to get run out of town. And that is what's taking place right now with some of these programs. If they miss, Washington will be in the same spot. If they don't get a quarterback to replace Michael Penix, if LSU doesn't get the right guy to replace Jaden Daniels, if you don't see the right guy to replace Bo Nix up at Oregon, these teams are going to be in the same position that we're talking about right now with USC and Ohio State, but they'll be there next year.
We talk all the time about how the message gets stales in hockey for coaches, and it's like a 3 to 5 year window. College football, it's going to feel like college football coaches are going to be attached to that one quarterback, and after that quarterback's gone, the cycle's going to start again for the new transfer portal, for the new coach, and it's just going to continue to repeat.
It's why Drinkwitz has to find his next answer now.
Yeah.
Like you got to find the next guy a year ahead of time. This is what Gary Pinkel, I think, did better than anybody in the country. He always had the succession plan in place a year in advance.
And now provide them incentive enough to stay and wait, because that's the hard part for college football athletes now is they don't want to wait for that opportunity.
And then on top of that, down the list maybe just a tad, hoping that your offensive continuity with respect to the coaching staff stays intact for long enough to see it all come to fruition.
That voice you just heard is Bradford Bruns. He's working the board for us today. T-Bone off this week. He'll be back in next week with us, Alex Ferrario and Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we will get to questions and answers. If you guys have any of those, get them in on the text line right now at 314-399-9646. But next, Alex, if I told you that the Cardinals, you can make an argument as of today, project better offensively and with their starting rotation than the Texas Rangers, your reaction would be what? We'll get into that next year on 101 ESPN.
Thursday Night Football on ESPN. Browns and Jets. Pregame at 6:30. Kickoff at 7:15. The NFL lives on 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN. Sports Center.
Christmas break concludes for the Notes. Good morning. I'm Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. For the first time since Saturday, the Blues hit the ice tonight. They're in search of win number 18 overall as Dallas comes to town for a 7 p.m. puck drop on 101 ESPN. The Stars most recently knocked off the Preds 3-2. College football. Last night's action featured Kansas clobbering UNLV 49-36 on these very airwaves in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Mizzou and Ohio State locking horns in about 56 hours. OC Kirby Moore recognizes the many challenges presented by those Buckeyes.
Starts with personnel. They got some pretty good players right up front. Linebackers, 35 does a great job in terms of play recognition. Secondary, the point totals, I think it's 7 or 8 of the games right under 12 points. So give them credit for that. There's a variety of defense. Coach Knowles does a really good job. But at the same time, with that variety of defense, they're really sound.
That audio courtesy of the Cotton Bowl staff, and this Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at Londoff.com and LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex and Bradford, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we'll get into questions and answers. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Alex, I went over to the FanGraphs projections earlier today.
Of course you did, because BK's bored. He says, let's check out FanGraphs.
Frankly, because there's not a lot going on in baseball. And I was like, okay, let's see where the Cardinals are at. Like, let's reset the situation a little bit. So I decided, let's compare them to the team that, won the World Series last year. Let's see how they're stacking up. I bet you it's pretty far, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, one won the World Series, and the other hasn't been there since 2013.
Good catch. I think you're about to
almost
say
at 11
in there.
Yeah.
So
I'm a Cardinals fan.
I assumed that there would be a pretty wide gap between the two teams, right? Because, like you said, Rangers just won the World Series. They're basically bringing everybody back other than Jordan Montgomery. This is a lineup that was crushing for most of last season, a rotation that was solid. I think people would take them, just in a theoretical sense, over what the Cardinals have currently. And yet, when I look at the projections, the Cardinals, you could make an argument, have better projections, both in the rotation and in the lineup, compared to what you are now expecting out of the Rangers in 2024. Alex, the Cardinals, if you're just looking, I went by weighted runs created plus. You could go by any other metric. Like if you want to go by OPS, wins above replacement, whatever your favorite is, it all is the same thing. It ends up being the exact same thing of what I'm saying here. The Cardinals, if you're going one for one from the top to the bottom of the lineup, they are basically the same in the top 5 spots in the lineup. And then the Cardinals have a little bit more depth in the middle. And then if you want to make a discussion about who the 9th best hitter is on a day-in, day-out basis, the Rangers are a little bit better there. But overall, it's essentially coming out in the wash saying these lineups should be eerily similar with what they produce in 2024. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty high on this lineup as well. I could see how you get there with a projection system where you look at it, you're like, all right, so yeah, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan, Jordan Walker, Wilson Contreras, Nolan Gorman. Those are going to be good hitters in some way or another. What about the pitching? Because I think that's the real question for most Cardinals fans. It is the question for me as well. I'm not as high on this pitching, this rotation, as I think the Cardinals seem to be internally.
You could have stuck with just pitching. It would have been fine.
Fair. I don't know how high they are on their bullpen right now either, though, to be fair. I think they know
I don't
that
see
they
them
need to
making
upgrade
moves,
that.
BK. They
Fair.
must be competent.
Dude, the rotation, you can make an argument right now the Cardinals have a better opening day rotation than the Rangers. Let's go one for one. Nathan Eovaldi versus Sonny Gray. Who would you rather have next year, Alex?
Regular season Sonny Gray, but we all know Sonny Gray can't pitch in the postseason, so Nathan Eovaldi.
Fair. Miles Michaelis or John Gray? I think it's pretty close.
Yeah, I'd say that's a wash. Probably John Gray for the inconsistency of seasons with Miles Michaelis, but I'd say wash.
Strikeout stuff, I can understand that. Dane Dunning or Kyle Gibson? I would rather have Kyle Gibson. I think I know more of what I'm expecting out of Kyle Gibson next year than Dane Dunning.
But I feel like there's upside still with Dane Dunning, and I'm arguing a guy who probably at best is a 3 and another guy who at best is a 4. So I would go wash, but I'd probably lean more towards Dane Dunning.
Andrew Heaney or Steven Matz? I think they're the same thing.
I think they're the same person, so I'll say wash.
Jake Odorizzi or Lance Lynn?
I mean, I'd go Lynn because I know the innings are going to be there. But, man, am I very concerned. I don't know if Jake Odorizzi's...
You're worried about the Linnings with him, but...
The Linnings?
Mm-hmm. The innings are fine. The Linnings are not great.
Did you just try and do a dad joke on top of it?
That's cute.
That's pretty good.
That's cute. When they say that's cute, that's like a fake laugh. I'd go Lance Lynn only because he's going to give me innings from start to finish, or Linnings, as BK likes to joke. But I don't think Jake Odorizzi is going to be giving up 8 almost every other night.
The opening day rotation, I think, favors the Cardinals. Now, the Rangers might end up adding Jordan Montgomery. It throws everything out of whack.
And then Jacob deGrom comes back.
Sure. We'll get to that part here in a second. But the opening day rotation, I'd rather have what the Cardinals have going into the season than what the Rangers have. If you want to look at the opening day lineups, as of today, I think they're eerily similar. Or you could make an argument the Cardinals are a little better because of the depth in the Cardinals lineup compared to what the Rangers have. This is not to suggest that the Cardinals are a better team than the Rangers, or that the Cardinals are more likely to go to the World Series than the Rangers. The real difference between these two teams, Alex, is what you mentioned. Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, Tyler Mahle. Those guys coming back at some point mid-season, late season for the Rangers changes the outlook of their October status. The Cardinals' questions to me right now are not really about whether or not they can succeed in the regular season. I think they have built a team that should, with this division, compete for 85 to 90 wins. The question is, and that probably will win the division, the question is, can you win in October with the way that you're currently constructed? And I don't know the answer to that. That's why I still believe that they need to go out there and add another frontline starting pitching. But when you look at those projections and you think about how they compare to the Texas Rangers, who won the World Series last year, what was your reaction, Alex? Because for me, I was pretty surprised by how close it was.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely am very surprised at how close it was. I mean, it's so hard to just omit deGrom and Scherzer and Mahle because those are massive pieces. But let's be honest, neither of them were really expecting to be healthy for a large portion of the season. That's been their MO at least the last couple of years. So going 1 for 1, yeah, I absolutely would look at that and say, okay, yeah, the Cardinals could do that. Now, the difference, of course, is the Rangers looked at that and said, we need to make massive upgrades to this and the trades that they made to be a better team. The Cardinals, I don't buy into. But to start a season off and all of the hype that's going to be around the Texas Rangers because you're coming off of a World Series, the Cardinals arguably have just as good, if not better, rotation than what they put out there. And I asked you about the bullpen, and I looked at it. The Texas Rangers bullpen was not good last year. So you kind of are 1 for 1 in that spot. And honestly, if you're going full team, we go back to the offense, I'd give the slight edge to the Cardinals because I think they have more depth in terms of hitting than what the Texas Rangers might have at the top of their hitting.
So here's the question, because I think we're in agreement there. Can you build a team? Because I think this is the most common complaint that I have and that I think fans have about the Cardinals. Can you build a team for October on opening day if you're not tanking and you're not into the CBT threshold?
No.
Can you?
I don't think you can. I think there's teams that do one or the other. And those teams, Phillies, Dodgers, Braves, those are the teams that are hitting the tax threshold, the Mets. And then you've got your Tampa Bay Rays, teams that are kind of in between, but then you've got the teams that like completely blew it up, the Houston Astros, the Chicago Cubs, the teams that just went awful for a good 10-year stretch so that they could get to that promised land.
So last year going into the season, forget what actually happened, but going into the season, the Mets were built for October, you would say, Alex? Like they were built to win in the regular season and then hopefully get through October.
The offseason that they had, they built it for an October run.
Phillies?
Yes.
The Braves,
yes,
those 3 teams were all top 7 in opening day payroll.
Yep.
You would say that the Dodgers and Padres were built for the regular season and the October run.
Yep.
The Rangers were built for that going into the season. The Houston Astros were built for that. All of these teams so far ended up with a payroll of over $200 million at some point in the regular season. The Toronto Blue Jays, I think you could have made an argument for that. Also over $200 million. The Cardinals were at 175 last year in terms of their payroll. And this year, you're going to at some point get closer to that $200 million threshold. But they're not going to get anywhere close to paying out of the tax. I do think this is a conversation that is worth having and worth noting in the backdrop of how we feel about the Cardinals. I don't think you can have good rotation, good lineup, good bullpen, good defense going into opening day without doing one of the two following things. Having tanked for 3 to 5 years, which most of these teams at some point probably did, or spending a boatload of money up to the point where you're getting into the luxury tax.
But the difference...
If you're unwilling to do either of those two things, I think you have to go light somewhere. You have to go light at the back end of your rotation, or you have to go light at the bullpen. You have to go light somewhere in your lineup. You're going to have a significant weakness that fans will view as a potential fatal flaw, but you have to hope that you've got internal answers that will at some point emerge and patch over whatever that flaw is. But that's how you have to operate if you're a team like the Cardinals, a team like the Brewers, etc.
The difference is those other teams, not named the Cardinals, that when they operate that way, there's faith from a fan base that they're going to go out at the trade deadline and say, we need to upgrade this area.
Totally fair.
And the Cardinals go into a season thinking like, well, we did what we could, and if these guys aren't good enough, then we're not going to get there.
And that's why I think they need to add another starter now.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that faith that the Cardinals are going to be aggressive at the trade deadline to go get a front-end starting pitcher that they, I believe, need in order to win in October. The Brewers have shown an ability, a willingness when they're in it. Man, they're going to push, and they're going to go try to make that big-time trade in July that will push them through October. We've seen them make those kinds of moves in the past.
Texas just did it.
The Cardinals have not, man. They just haven't. And until they show you a willingness to do so, it is totally reasonable to be skeptical of that and to want more of them going into opening day because of that, because you're projecting to what they're going to do at the trade deadline. But I do think it is fair to also acknowledge they're going to have to be light somewhere. And I think what they would say is their place that they're going to be light is that front end starting pitching. My concern is, why didn't you just make it the back end of the rotation, fill the front end starter, and allow the numbers to fill the capacity of the back end of your rotation? But a philosophical difference, I guess you could say, between myself and the St. Louis Cardinals.
Well, you're fired.
Coming up next, questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
for this week's Fastlane Pick'em Challenge at 101ESPN.com. Show off your football knowledge and see if you can top the Fastlane and the dudes from the Rizzuto Show on the point. For this week's top score, it's the Fastlane and the Riz Show throwing down all football season long in the Pick'em Challenge. Enter your picks for this week right now at 101ESPN.com.
Refreshed by Bud Light, official beer sponsor of the NFL. Easy to Sunday, easy to enjoy.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. You guys give us some questions, we'll give you some answers here on 101 ESPN.
I got a lot of them.
Coming up here in just a little bit, we'll talk about the Blues' decision to go with not Jordan Binnington. Instead, Joel Hofer will be getting the start coming out of the break. We'll get into that coming up here in just a little bit. But Alex, we got this from the 314. Guys, one thing that I could say about Alex, he may be delusional about the Blues, but he's consistent with how he feels. BK seems to flip-flop with how he feels about the Blues every 2 weeks. So to Grant or Alex, Bradford, how many losses in the next 2 weeks will it take for BK to flip-flop, to being back off of the bandwagon once again? Can I say something clearly?
Well, no, the question wasn't to you, sir.
Okay,
it was to me
ahead,
and
sorry.
Bradford. No, go for it. Go ahead. Get high on your hopium.
I'm not on the bandwagon. I'm not. I would say right now I'm very skeptical that they're going to be able to continue playing as well as they have in their last 5 games. As of today, my stance is very simple. It's been fun to see them trying hard again. It's been fun to see Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou and Pavel Buchnevich, 3 guys that need to steer you through this retool, perform like top-line players again. It's been fun to see a guy in Drew Bannister get this opportunity and seemingly, through 5 games, run with it. That's it. It's really that simple. I don't think you have... I think you're missing like 4 spots in your top 9 right now of contending teams' top 9 forwards. I think you're missing a top 4 defenseman right now. Maybe 2 top 4 defensemen right now. And if you don't have these pieces, I don't think you contend for anything meaningful. But I would love for them to prove me wrong. You've got a goalie who, if you get into the playoffs, can win you a series. You've got a couple of players with Kyrou, Thomas, Buchnevich that can score goals in the postseason if you get there. So I would love nothing more than to be wrong about this team, but that's where I stand on them. I don't think I've really wavered on that at any point this season. But hey, man, we got to talk about something. And right now they're interesting. So what would it look like if they get better? It's what we said earlier today.
I will defend my guy, BK. Because, of course, we're brothers here on this show. I will defend him. This season, he has not jumped back and forth. He has been very steadfast on this team is boring, and they're very predictable. And when they looked exciting, you started to say, okay, let's see what they got here. And then they've fallen back into grace. But to his credit, if they do go on a run here in this next 2-week stretch, and you used the word hard, which is very funny because Drew Bannister just used that with the media. He said, quote, it was good for them to get a reset, take a break. This is going to be a tough part of our schedule. I've said this before. I think we need hard right now to see where we're at, and this is going to be a good test for us. If they come out of this looking different, everybody should be back on that bandwagon, not just
Go
BK.
500. Go 500 in this stretch of 10 games, and I will not be buying into them as Stanley Cup contenders, but I'll be interested to see what they can do the rest of the way to make things interesting for Army by the trade deadline.
Yeah.
That's really what they're trying to do right now is, hey, make it hard for Doug Armstrong to trade some of these pieces away at the deadline.
And there really is an inherent unpredictability to what you're going to encounter between the 6th and the 23rd of January. For crying out loud, you have solely Eastern Conference opponents during that time. You've got Florida, you've got the New York Rangers, you have a team in Carolina. At that point, exactly how is that team going to be performing? So it really is critical with the teams you've encountered more often, specifically the next 4 in particular. Really interested to see what the team is able to bring to the table.
No, all right, I'm also the psychopath that just believes the Blues are always good and they'll figure it out.
You are with the Blues, what I am with the Cardinals.
Yes.
We've got our rules on this show.
Very
we know how to
true.
play 'em. All right, from the 636, guys, do you think that Josh Hader would make the Cardinals a legitimate contender? Because I think it could. I find the Josh Hader conversation to be fascinating, man. I really do. I think it would be an objectively bad decision by the Cardinals. I think it would be bad business to pay $20 million a year on a multi-year contract to a reliever. That is my firm opinion on the matter. But
It's worked out in the past for the Cardinals, though.
if the Cardinals are trying to go not all in, but something approaching all in on 2023 or 2024, I suppose, I think it would be a fascinating move that absolutely makes them a contender. Hader is the kind of move that you make where it's almost to the bullpen what Tyler Glasnow would have been to your rotation, where suddenly you are shortening games at the back end of your pen. Helsley going into Hader, hot damn, dude. That is something that a contender would have at the back end of their pen. So I think it'd be a bad move long term, but for 2024, hell yeah, it makes you better.
Yeah, it makes you absolutely better. I don't know if it makes you a contender because I still think you're weak in the starting pitching spot, and I don't see that team going out there to get an ace at the deadline. I think the team would be more likely to go out there and make a move for a Josh Hader-esque player at the deadline than the starting pitcher, but you're significantly better than what you are right now because your weakest spot is your rotation.
Let me get this straight. 2 frequently dominating guys at the back end of your bullpen, but also 2 guys who haven't exactly demonstrated the habit of taking the ball consistently day after day after day.
Yeah, you get it.
Yeah.
You get it. See, now you got a closer every day because when Hader's unavailable, you go to Helsley. When Helsley's unavailable, you go to Hader.
You just gotta hope that when one says he doesn't want to go, the other one's like, no, you know what, I'm not feeling it today, and then you got to go to Gallegos.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for questions and answers. Last one here. Alex, do you believe that Paul Goldschmidt will be a Cardinal in 2025?
Yeah, I do. Paul Goldschmidt's not going anywhere because the Cardinals love one thing, and that is making sure that legends stay here. And Paul Goldschmidt will go down as a St. Louis legend, whether you believe it or not, and he'll be a Cardinals Hall of Famer. So, yeah, he's going to wrap up his career here.
Bradford?
Year to year at this point in his career. Why? Because why press the issue if you're the organization as well?
Oh, no, he's not year to year. He's getting a 5-year deal. Cardinal for life.
You just had to go there.
Coming up in 15 minutes, some NFL quick hitters, including the Broncos' decision to go with a new quarterback. And they are not alone. The Washington Commanders did the exact same, and so did the New York Giants. Why are so many teams making quarterback decisions right now? We'll get into that coming up in about 15 minutes or so. But next, Jordan Binnington. Alex, I think it's fair to say at this point, he's proven to us he is not a 60-game goalie. That's fine. But the Blues' decision today seems to indicate they are learning the exact same thing. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex and Bradford, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So Jordan Binnington is not getting the starts tonight. Alex, that is a bit of a surprise to me. Not because I think he had earned it or he's deserving of it or anything like that, but because he's the number one goalie. And typically what you do in this spot is you got to reset, and now you go out with your number one guy, and you put him in the net, and then you go from there, and you kind of work the schedule around getting your number one goalie out there. But Joel Hofer's been better recently than Jordan Binnington has. And if you wanted to do it where 2 of the next 3 games, you get Joel Hofer in net instead of having 2 of those 3 games for Jordan Binnington, this is the way you got to go about it. You get Hofer in tonight, you go Binnington on Friday, you go back to Joel Hofer in the back-to-back situation on Saturday night against Pittsburgh. What was your reaction when you saw, Alex, that it's going to be Hofer in net tonight for the Blues?
I mean, I wasn't surprised. And frankly, I told you in the office, like, it wouldn't make sense if they went to Joel Hofer here. So Joey talked about it with us on pregame. What was that? It was a couple of Saturday, the Blackhawks game. And apparently the internal discussion was, do we go back to Joel Hofer after that Florida Panthers game? And the reason they went to Jordan Binnington was because Drew Bannister wanted to get him feeling good about himself going into that Christmas break. And so they put him in the game to try and lift his spirits a little bit. Not that he's been playing poorly, but, I mean, we've gone on a stretch of Jordan Binnington giving up 3 or more goals. I think it's been, what is it, in 5 out of his last 6 starts or 6 out of his last 7 starts, he's given up 3 or more goals. So that's not a trend that you want. So you put him in there against Chicago and you said, look, you get your goaltender feeling a little bit better. Now, he gave up 5 goals on 20 shots. Not good, but at the end of the day, you won that game. Joel Hofer deserves to be in the net right now. And Jordan Binnington, I'll give him a little bit of an out because my man has played a lot of hockey, because not only has he gotten the starts, but he's also had to come in games because Joel Hofer's been yanked a couple of times. So you've played a lot of hockey games. I looked it up. So he's played the 4th most starts so far this season amongst all goaltenders. And to top that one off, if you're just going games played amongst goaltenders, Jordan Binnington is 3rd most, tied with Thatcher Demko. So the
started 11 of the last 14 games.
Yeah, and then you're talking
out of 14,
and you're talking 2 of those 3 that he didn't start, he got into because Joel Hofer was pulled. So is
that right?
I'm pretty sure, because
I think that was before. That was before.
That was before. I was going to say, because I know Hofer finished that Florida Panthers game, but
yeah, this is starting with Chicago on November 26th.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So, but here's the thing: Jordan Binnington, we've learned, is going to go through these dry spells in the middle of the season. It happens, and it happens to all goaltenders if you're not Vasilevsky or some of these top guys.
We used to talk about it all the time with Jake Allen, how, hey, he goes through his January slumber, send him down to Cabo, he'll come back in February, he'll be fine, but for January, he ain't going to be on his game.
And that's not a bad thing, because there's one thing we know about Jordan Binnington. When he's well rested, and when you get down into the final stretch of the regular season, into the postseason, he's winning you hockey games, he's stealing you games. We've learned that Jordan Binnington can be a regular season goaltender the first chunk of the season. Frankly, he was the best that he's seen probably in his NHL career at the start of a season this year. So right now, we're recognizing that Jordan Binnington is going to have some days off. You're going to have to utilize your backup goaltender probably somewhere between 35 to 40 starts so that Jordan Binnington isn't playing 60 to 65 games in a season. He's not Yusei Saros. He's not Connor Hellebuck. He's not Andrei Vasilevsky. He's the best of that middle group of goaltenders that you're going to play 40 to 45 games. And if you're giving him rest, which is what Drew Bannister's doing right now, he had the break. He'll play Friday against Colorado, and then Joel Hofer will go back in against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Saturday. I don't think that's a bad thing for Jordan Binnington. You need to make sure that he is in the right mindset and ready to go at the most crucial times.
So I would also add this. I think it's important, if you're in Drew Bannister's spot, to play the guys that are deserving of being out there. And that doesn't always happen, whether it's an interim head coach, the actual head coach, whoever. the best players, the most deserving players, do not always get the most playing time. They are not always the guys that start this game coming out of the break. And for Drew Bannister, if he's been anything, he's been consistent.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said on day one, this is how I'm going to operate as the head coach of the Blues. And he has stuck to that. And that's important, man. Players will respond to it. Now, that doesn't mean he's a great coach. It doesn't mean that these decisions are all going to work out. It doesn't even mean that all the players are going to like it. I have no idea how Binnington reacted when he walked into the room today and probably saw Hofer's name on the starter's net, and he's probably not thrilled, I would have to imagine. That's pure speculation by me, but I can't imagine. He's a competitor. He wants to be out there, right? Mm-hmm. But he's going to live with it because he will know. He'll probably have a conversation at some point, either today or in the next few hours. Like, they're going to sit down, and Bannister's going to say, Hofer's been better. If you want to be the guy that gets games like this, and you want to be the guy that gets the first game and then the second of the back-to-back, go be better. Go earn it.
Yeah.
And if you do, Bannister has shown, I'll put you right back out there. I'll stick with you. I'm going to go with whoever gives us the best chance to win. And right now, for better or worse, in late December, the answer for the guy that gives you the best chance to win tonight might be Joel Hofer. I don't expect that to still be the case when we get to February. I don't expect that to be the case in 3 weeks. But for today, I think it's smart. I think it's the right way to operate, and I think it gets him a little bit of cachet inside of that locker room when those guys that are looking around, they can all see the same things that we do, man, and they see that Benner's been struggling lately.
There's nothing wrong, and people are going to hear this and think, well, he's an average goaltender. No, look, there's nothing wrong with having a goaltender who has his downs in season, but you know when he's at his best, he's one of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League. In the first 10 games of the season, he had a .930 save percentage. He showed you that, look, this is a guy that at the front of the season, he's going to be able to pick up some games for you and keep you in. He goes through a stretch where that next 10-game stretch, we're talking about somebody who dipped to about a .905 save percentage. And now you're looking at somebody who is right around the .895 save percentage. You're a dry spell right now. But what Drew Bannister is doing is continuing the accountability that we've talked so much about. And Doug Armstrong had a quote about it earlier today. We'll hear more on pregame tonight, talking about how Bannister is showcasing that accountability. And Army just basically said, look, as an organization, as a franchise that wants to start winning, you're going to have a coach who's willing to do this. And he's done it with Buchnevich. He said it about Jordan Kyrou since the moment he took over, and now he's doing it with Jordan Binnington. And frankly, it's a good thing for Jordan Binnington, because when we've seen him at his best, he's got somebody on the bench that's pushing him to play better, because if he doesn't, he's not going to get into hockey games. And when he had Thomas Greiss, and when he had, no disrespect to him, but Ville Husso in the first portion of his time here, Binnington was like, oh, I'm not going anywhere. I'm starting all of these games. But with Jake Allen and now with Joel Hofer, you're going to get better of Jordan Binnington.
Yeah, and you'll get better of him just because he's fresher.
Yes.
If you have a guy that's starting 11 out of the 14 games, he's just eventually his legs give out, man.
And let's not take anything away from Joel Hofer, too. Like, we've seen Joel Hofer at his best, and he's a very capable goaltender to win you hockey games, and you need him
It's
going.
just the variance in his game that's frustrating. That's because he's a young goalie. Like, that happens.
Ville Husso was the exact same way.
So the Blues back in action tonight. Blues versus the Dallas Stars. This is the beginning of what is a very difficult stretch for St. Louis. Dallas, Colorado, Pittsburgh, and then Vancouver, Carolina, Florida, New York, Boston, and Philly, who has been pretty good this year. And then Washington, who's really started to heat things up. They are playing much better lately, despite Alex Ovechkin having quite the scoring drought. They're playing better hockey. You got back-to-back against them. This is a brutal stretch. Over the next 3 weeks, the Blues are going to go up against most of the best teams in the NHL. We're going to learn a lot about them over this stretch. And Alex, depending on what their record looks like, we might see this be the start of what ends up getting them into contention. And if they do, I don't know that we'll see Jimmy Snuggerud by the end of the year. But if they hover around 500 and you get to, March, and you've got an opportunity to get a young guy some playing time here. We talked about this a little bit yesterday with Jeremy Rutherford. Asked him, hey, do you think we could see Jimmy Snuggerud, who we're watching right now in the World Juniors, at some point this season? He said, yeah. He said he thinks that you will see a little bit of Snugs. What is your expectation on when we will see the arrival of the top prospect in the Blue system?
I think you're going to see him at the end of Minnesota's season. And I don't know how long that's going to be. Last year, they were a really good team. And Matthew Neese, the top prospect for the Toronto Maple Leafs, came over and played 3 regular season games and then played in the playoffs for them. I'd say that's the exact same thing you're going to see with Jimmy Snuggerud. Maybe more of the games in the regular season. Now, what will happen, if I'm not mistaken, is they'll bring him on a tryout basis so that they don't burn a year of his entry-level contract. So he'll come in as a PTO, and then he'll join the team, and then he'll play in a couple of games, and then next season will be that entry-level status. But I do expect Jimmy Snuggerud, whether this team's fighting for a playoff spot or whether they're out of the playoffs, I expect Jimmy Snuggerud to be a part of this team because this is that next step. Doug Armstrong had the great interview with Kerbs on Curbside talking about how, they debated if they wanted Snuggerud to go back, and ultimately it was his decision, but they said it's good for him to go back this year because the talent's not around him. He's got to figure out how to be the top player on his team. That's the next step before you go to the NHL. And he'll come to the NHL, he'll play a few games. If he sticks, then he's just going to continue that growing process. And if not, then you start in the AHL next year. But Jimmy Snuggerud will turn pro at the end of this season because he's showcasing all of his abilities. And at this point in his career, I'm not sure there's anything else you can do at the college level or at the World Juniors.
According to Jeremy Rutherford, Doug Armstrong heading to the World Junior Championships in Sweden tomorrow, so he will be in attendance to be able to watch some of those young players. The Blues have 7 of them that are participating in the World Junior Championship. With Alex Ferrario and Bradford Browns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters, including multiple teams that have made a decision to change their starting quarterback. One of them, the headliner, is the Denver Broncos. What's going to happen next for Russell Wilson? We'll talk about it here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. Every month during the season, you can check out either the 101 mobile app or 101ESPN.com for your chance to get entered to win for a pair of tickets to an upcoming Blues home game at Enterprise Center. New winners picked every month throughout the season for free tickets to see the Blues in action, courtesy of 101 ESPN. Get entered to win now online at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. This is exactly where you want to be, listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters alongside Alex and Bradford. I'm Brandon. Kylie, you've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, the big story in the NFL today is all the quarterback decisions that have taken place. Now, we'll get to the headliner here in just a moment, but Washington has decided, you know what, Jacoby Brissett, you're our best guy.
Can't blame him there.
Yeah, that's the right decision. Sam Howell was not the guy, has not been the guy, should not be the guy, is not going to be the guy. The New York Giants have come to their senses and decided, you know what, this Tommy DeVito thing, it was fun for a little bit. Go ahead and go to the bench, though. This is not working any longer. We're going to go ahead and not have you as our starter anymore. So those two teams made a change. But the one that everybody's talking about, Alex, is the Denver Broncos, who have decided we're done with this Russell Wilson experience. Oof. Because if he gets hurt in the final two games of the regular season, we are on the hook for his entire salary next year. He's got some guarantees that kick in. Alex, this seems to suggest they're moving on. They're done with him at the end of the season. They're going to go their separate ways. They would take on a $50 million charge next year if they decided to cut him. Where do you think Russell Wilson goes from here? What happens next? He's 36 years old next year. Is somebody going to sign him as a starter? What happens with Russ?
I don't think he's a starter. I think if he gets signed, he's signed as like a backup, like what Geno Smith was before we got the starting role. Frankly, I think he's done. If you're Russell Wilson, you're probably done. I mean, you're married to Sierra. You have a great life. You've played the NFL. You won Super Bowls. If you're him, is it really worth continuing if you're going to be a backup?
Competitor, man.
I get it, but can you be a competitor as a backup?
I don't think he's going to be a backup. I think there's too many teams that are quarterback needy that I think he would end up getting another opportunity. I mean, look at the guys that are starting in the NFL.
I get it, but who's going to take on a guy that struggled in his final 2 years of Seattle and then struggled his entire time in Denver?
Tennessee? Could they do it? I mean, I don't know how they feel about Will Levis right now, but maybe they would do it.
Is he a better option than what Ryan Tannehill was for you this year?
Exactly.
Because I think they're the exact same quarterback.
I think that's fair, but sometimes it's just change for change's sake, right? Like the Cardinals. Are you better right now with Lance Lynn than you would have been with Jack Flaherty? I don't know, but it's change for change's sake. You have to do something different.
If Mike Vrabel's still the head coach there, I don't know if I want to take that risk.
More than fair.
Because that's a job killer right there.
But so the Falcons, are they a team that could look into him?
If I'm the Falcons, I'm going to do everything I can possible to get a quarterback in this year's draft.
I'm with you, but we know how they operate, and they are not particularly bright. The New England Patriots, could they go with a quarterback in the first round this year? We know how Bill Belichick is if he's the coach.
Yeah.
Do they decide, hey, 1 year with Russell Wilson, he'll be our stopgap the way that we did it with Cam Newton after Tom Brady left, and then we'll get the rookie in here to start the following season? Like, those are the kinds of things that I think you could see. Maybe at Pittsburgh, maybe he goes out there and gets an opportunity there. Those kinds of teams that are in transition right now, I could see something like that.
The word stopgap is the operative one there because, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, yes, the Broncos have proceeded to slide down the stretch. They've lost 3 of 4, but this season, I would contend that Wilson hasn't played nearly as poorly as he did in 2022, but this is more about giving the keys. Sean Payton did inherit this situation and now putting his official imprint on the organization moving forward. We all know about the dead money charges that could be incurred. It just makes sense. You're not going anywhere this season. You're in the mix. So what? 7-8, it's over.
Yeah, I understand why they're moving on. I also think it would be more than reasonable for a team to decide that he's the guy that they want to move on with. Like, if the Raiders are probably not going to be in a great spot this offseason to go out there and get a quarterback in the draft because they're winning too much. Could he be an answer for them for 1 year as a stopgap, basically be for them what they thought Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be this year? I could see something like that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a team like that doesn't get you excited. Nobody looks at it and says to themselves, they're going to be a real contender now. Watch out for the Russell Wilson-led Tennessee Titans. No, nobody's going to think that. But I think Russ is fine. I think at this point in his career, that's all he is. Nothing more and nothing less. If he is your starting quarterback, he's a caretaker for a year, and you move on after the season.
Man, if I'm a coach, though, I look at that as I'm going to lose my job.
Maybe.
I'm going to lose my job because of Russell Wilson.
All right, next thing up here. Speaking of the Raiders, Alex, I went back and, unfortunately, rewatched the Chiefs versus the Raiders game last night to figure out what in God's name went wrong for the Chiefs. Man, some of it was as simple as that Raiders defense is playing their asses off right now. They are flying to the football, and some of that's because the Chiefs are highly predictable, and they've got a lot of problems on that offense. I understand all of those things. But you look at the way that they've played defensively since they had Antonio Pierce take over as the head coach. Been pretty good, man. Allowed 6 points against the Giants, allowed 12 points against the Jets, 20 points against the Miami Dolphins. Pretty damn good against that offense. Gave up 3 against the Minnesota Vikings.
And then decided to let
21 against the Chargers, but that game was over in the first half against Easton Stick. And then this week, shut down the Kansas City Chiefs. Have you seen enough from Antonio Pierce that you think he should be the head coach next year in Las Vegas?
I'd give him a shot. I absolutely would. Now, it depends on who else is out there. If I feel like there's a better head coach available to me, their biggest problem is figuring out what the hell you're going to do with a quarterback. So, like, Antonio Pierce got the best out of this team with Aiden O'Connell, so I would absolutely give him a shot. But if I go out there and make a trade to bring in a quarterback or draft a really good quarterback, I might consider a coaching change because I want somebody to step in at the same time as my new quarterback. But if not, yeah, I'd look at Antonio Pierce.
I think I like him.
If anything,
I would hire him.
If anything, I'd give him a defensive coordinator job.
Yeah, I think he's earned it. I really do. And I normally don't fall for these interim head coach things. There's something about him as the head coach with the Raiders that feels right.
Feels right. The resume's on the grass, right?
Yeah.
And I think you understood
it wasn't for Jeff Saturday.
When he took over momentarily, that you would get that defensive tenacity. Crosby is one of the most transformative players on that side of the football in the entire National Football League. But if you were to surround, just think about this, next season in that division, a division that is looking increasingly topsy-turvy, a lot of uncertainty there. If you surround Pierce as your head coach, he takes on more of that CEO-style position with some offensive ingenuity, and you figure out how not to waste Devontae Adams, you may have enough pieces there by supplementing. I could see that.
He grew up a Raiders fan. He talked about this whenever he first got that opportunity there as the interim head coach. I don't know if it would work, but I think it's worth a shot, man.
His career screams Raiders, though. Like a grindy defensive player that was always tough to go up against. Like, he screams a Raider.
I think he makes a lot of sense for them. I kind of like it. I think
Seems like a stopgap, too, where you get them for a couple of years to get the team right, and then when you're ready to start competing, you bring somebody in.
Maybe. He might be good, though. Like, I think we also have to be open to the idea that he's a good coach. I don't know that he is, but
he's got the
I'm
buy-in.
at least open to it.
That's for sure. You need the buy-in. That's the first thing you need as a coach.
All right, next thing up, NFL Quick Hitters here on 101 ESPN. Guys, I saw this yesterday, the advanced nerdy numbers. Something called a DVOA, Alex.
Oh, my God. Is that
basically
like
the wins above replacement for the NFL is what this is. According to this one metric, the Baltimore Ravens are the 4th best team since 1981.
Who were the other 4?
The top 3 teams since 1984, according to this metric, the 2007 Patriots, the 1991 Washington, at that time, racial slurs, and the 1985 Chicago Bears.
Oh, my God.
4th on the list?
No.
The Baltimore Ravens. You know who number 5 is?
The Baltimore Ravens.
The San Francisco 49ers from this year.
Oh, recency bias.
Do you guys feel like we are watching 2 of the 5 best teams in the last 40 years?
Oh, serious question.
I don't understand. How is this possible? What's going on?
If you would have told me that in the first couple of weeks of the season with Baltimore, I would have laughed you out of the building. And now we're saying that after Brock Purdy threw 4 interceptions and Sam freaking Darnold took over for him.
This is ridiculous.
This is so stupid.
I don't understand.
This is why I hate analytics. It's a stupid thing in sports.
Now, all of the other teams on this list, make a lot of sense to me. I mean, we're talking about the 99 Rams, the 1995 San Francisco 49ers, the 2010 Patriots, the 94 Cowboys, the 2012 Seattle Seahawks that had the Legion of Boom. Like, all of these teams I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, yeah. I remember that team.
You can get the hell out of here, though.
Am I going to remember the 2023 Baltimore Ravens as an all-time great team that I'm going to be telling Luca about? Hell no. I'm going to be talking about the 07 Pats that didn't lose in the regular season. I'm going to be talking about the 85 Bears. Like, what is it that you're going to tell your kids about from this team?
You don't want to remember most of NFL football in 2023. We're taking two teams from this particular year
insanity.
Of pedestrian football.
You could get the hell out of here if you're going to tell me that this Baltimore Ravens team is better than the 99 Rams team.
Yeah, no, it's nonsense.
With Isaiah Likely and Gus Edwards.
You can't even tell me that this team is better than like a couple of the recent New England Patriots or Kansas City Chiefs or even the LA Rams team that won the Super Bowl.
I don't even think this Baltimore Ravens team is better than this year's Buffalo Bills team. I think Buffalo could beat them in a playoff round.
What about the Ray Lewis-led Ravens from 15 years ago? Please.
100%.
Any day.
Look, get the hell out of here.
None of this makes any sense to me. I don't understand it. And I think, Alex, if I had to give a hypothesis on why this is happening, I think the rest of the league is so bad this season that by comparison, you have had two teams that have emerged that are just so far and away, head and shoulders better than everybody else in the league that they look amazing. But when you actually look at them compared to the other teams in different years and you compare them to their peers, they're not up there with the greatest show on. If you got a nickname as a team, you're better than this year's team.
What's the nickname for the Baltimore Ravens?
If you're the Steel Curtain, like you're better than this team. If you're the Purple People Eaters, you're better than this team.
Downright disrespectful.
The Monsters of the Midway, better than this team. Anybody that had a nickname. By the way, do we do nicknames anymore?
Well, I do nicknames all the time. You just tell me
a football team in the NFL that had a nickname.
I do alliteration nicknames a little harder.
We know, Brad.
You do? Hold on, he does alliterations?
Stop the presses.
What was the last team? Like, I just talk about the 07 Pats. I don't.
Yeah.
Like
probably the Legion of Boom.
Oh, there you go.
That's probably the last one. But now because of Jamie Rivers, every time I hear Legion of Boom and the on the record with the Seattle Seahawks, now I just think of something other than football. You know, because the brothers got caught with the teammates.
Yep.
Wife. In the hotel
Legion
room.
of Boom, I think that's the most recent example of this.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave that to themselves. So,
can you give yourself a nickname?
We need somebody to come up with a nickname. Somebody should nickname the 2023 Baltimore Ravens. Then we'll remember them fondly.
I got one. Mediocre.
They're good, man.
Sorry.
That's
You're
unfair.
right.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up next. So I put out the poll yesterday, Alex, on the proposal that would have been the equivalent for the Cardinals to what reportedly the White Sox are asking of the Cincinnati Reds if they trade them Dylan Cease. And people got big mad at me. 60% of them said, I am not trading Tink Hintz, Gordon Graceffo, Thomas Sajaci, and Zach Thompson for Dylan Cease. It's a lot. I understand that. But why are people so hesitant to make that kind of a deal? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
your opinion on the Air Comfort Service heating, cooling, and insulation text line at 314-399-9646 on 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Blues make a move before returning to the ice. I'm Bradford Bruns, and this SportsCenter update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. This morning, St. Louis announced it has recalled Mackenzie McEachern from the AHL. The forward suited up for the note as recently as Saturday versus the Blackhawks. Tonight, Dallas arriving at Enterprise Center for a 7 p.m. puck drop on 101 ESPN. Joel Hofer expected to be between the pipes. Pigskin, College Style, Missouri, and OSU continuing preparations for the Cotton Bowl. Defensive coordinator Blake Baker and Darius Robinson among those expected to address the media later in the afternoon. About 12 hours ago, Kansas romped past UNLV 49-36 in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. This SportsCenter update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
So are Cardinals fans interested in making the big move or not? It's something that I'm trying to figure out in my own head right now. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. I'm not saying you're wrong for this, Cardinals fans. I'm not, I promise you. I am curious as to where our hesitation is, though, if the need is very clear. Got to go get a number one starter. Everybody agrees with that, right? And there are seemingly number one starters that are available. We know Dylan Cease is available. We believe that one of the Marlins pitchers could become available. Maybe it's Jesus Luzardo. You can have your discussions on whether or not he's a number one starter or not, but potentially available. Framber Valdez, there's at least some rumors of the possibility of him getting moved this offseason. Alex's guy is and always has been Logan Gilbert up in Seattle. So potential names that are out there. Alex, let's use Dylan Cease as the placeholder because he's the only guy that we know for sure is available right now. And there was a report yesterday on what the asking price is, at least from Cincinnati's side, for Dylan Cease. The report was a lot, but it was mostly prospects, guys that are close or close to the big league level or that are top 100 prospects down in the lower portions of the system. The equivalent for the Cardinals would be something like Tink Hence, Gordon Graceffo, Thomas Sajaci, and Zach Thompson. So I posted that on Twitter yesterday. And after about 2,500 votes, 60% of the responses said, nope, I would not be interested in sending Hence, Graceffo, Sajaci, and Thompson to the White Sox for Dylan Cease. I am just asking, Alex, why do you think that is? Again, I'm not saying that people are wrong because I would also be hesitant to send that much for Dylan Cease specifically. But do you think that is a scenario where people are hesitant on Cease? Do you think it is a situation where people feel burned by how much they had to give up for Marcell Ozuna and don't want the same thing to happen now with the pitching side of things? Do you think it is something else entirely? Why do you think it is that 60% of the responses when this team has such a clear need, and we get the text every day, everybody wants them to go get a number one starter? Why do you think it is that almost 2 out of every 3 responses were a no?
I think it's twofolded. One, I think it is because of Dylan Cease. People hear that and they're like, well, Dylan Cease isn't a top pitcher. And although I do fall into that category of thinking like, man, is he really the guy that you want? Because I'm not sure if he's an ace. But what I am sure of is the guy's got 200-plus strikeouts in 3 straight seasons. He's thrown over 160 innings in 3 straight seasons. He's given you 32 starts in 3 straight seasons. And in that conversation of the strikeouts, he's top 10 in strikeouts in Major League Baseball each of those 3 seasons. So, I mean, he might not be considered an ace in some people's eyes, but he's pitching like a number one. So I'm not sure what else you're looking for in the Dylan Cease. So I think that's one side of it. But I do think the other side of it is Cardinals fans get way too attached to prospects. Because I think if...
And I don't even think you have to say Cardinals fans, just
fans in general. Well, but see, like, I think there's other teams with fan bases that when a player, when prospects are traded away, it's like, yeah, okay, sure, because we're bringing in better pieces. But for some reason, when Cardinals fans hear the name Tink Hence, well, you can't give him away because he's the next Sandy Alcantara. We don't really know if Tink Hence is the next Sandy Alcantara.
We don't know if he's the next Jack Flaherty.
Yeah, we don't. He might be the next Alex Reyes to where he's a bust for you. Here's the thing. If you take Tink Hence's name out of this conversation, Cardinals fans would be like, sure, Gordon Graceffo, Thomas Ajacey, Zach Thompson for Dylan Cease. Do that in a heartbeat. The problem is that name Tink Hence, where everyone's like, no, that's too much to give up. But you're trading Tink Hence for somebody who is already what you hope Tink Hence is going to be. If you take Dylan Cease's name out of this trade proposal and enter Framber Valdez, Logan Gilbert for that package, I think Cardinals fans would be all for it. But if you also take Tink Hence's name out of it and keep Dylan Cease's name, I also think Cardinals fans would be like, yeah, sure, that's perfect.
I feel like there's a lot going on here. Like there's a number of different explanations from different. I think all of these for certain people is the explanation. I think for some people they say, look at what happened with Marcell Ozuna. We're just doing the same thing all over again, but this time for a pitcher instead of for a position player, because you're sending all of your pitching and those pitchers are going to go be good elsewhere, and you're going to be stuck without the pitching that you need 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. That's one explanation, potentially. I think there's another segment of people that are like what you just said there, Alex, that are saying, hey, I just don't want to do that for Dylan Cease. There's another segment of the fan base, though, that it's not Tink Hence, it's not Dylan Cease, it's Thomas Ajacey that is preventing them from making
Somebody
this deal.
texted and said, replace Ajacey with Brendan Donovan, and what?
I think Thomas Ajacey might be really good, dude. He has hit at every level. Like, if you want to talk production in the minor leagues, that dude has it in spades. He might end up being great. Kind of like Brendan Donovan is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I have trouble with when it comes to trading prospects. I know Brendan Donovan's good. I know Nolan Gorman is good. I know Jordan Walker is good. I know Dylan Cease is good. I have no idea what Tink Hence is going to be. I don't know if Gordon Graceffo is ever going to be a major league starting pitcher. I don't know if Zach Thompson is going to be a guy that at any point in his Cardinals career, you expect 20-plus starts out of him in the regular season. I have no idea. And I don't know if Thomas Ajacey is ever going to be a starter here in St. Louis. I don't know. So for those reasons and so many more, I think this is an overpay for Dylan Cease. I'm not as high on Dylan Cease as many others are. I would prefer to get Framber Valdez. I would prefer to get Logan Gilbert. I think I would prefer Jesus Luzardo potentially. But I think he's really good. And I think if you had him as a game 1 or a game 2 starter, he's giving you a fighting chance going up against whoever the opposition is. I think most teams that are legit contenders have better number 1 starters than Dylan Cease, but he's good. He's really good, and he's got great strikeout stuff. I probably would make this deal. And the reason why is what you said about Tink Hence specifically, Alex. That's the prize. The crown jewel of this would be Tink Hence as the headliner. Dude, last year in AA, and this is not me discounting him as a prospect. I think he might be really good down the road. He's 20 years old. He's still incredibly young. He had a 5.5 ERA, man. He struck out basically a batter per inning. Now, I think we might be 2 or 3 years away from him being a significant part of your rotation. And if you're willing to wait for that, by all means, totally fair. I don't blame you for it. But I think it is as likely, if not more likely at this point, that Tink Hence ends up being a closer for you as it is that Tink Hence ends up being a frontline starting pitcher for you. And those are the things that I don't think we weigh enough. Like, if you're looking at the spectrum of, hey, what is the 90th percentile outcome for Tink Hence? It's that he's probably like a number 2 starter on a really good team. What is the median outcome, though? What is the most likely outcome for Tink Hence? It's probably that he's a mid-rotation starter for somebody.
Right.
And it might actually be like either a mid-rotation starter or back end of the bullpen, depending on what you think is more important for that specific team, right? That's probably the most likely outcome for Tink Hence, given where he's at right now in his development. That's a really good outcome for any starting pitching prospect, is to be able to have that for him at the age of 20 years old, where he's cost-controlled, really talented, young player. But am I trading that for somebody that I think is right now a number 1 or a number 2 starter with multiple years of control, and over the next 2 years, I'm spending $16 million, $20 million for him? Hell yeah, I am, dude. Absolutely I am. Because this market is starved for a winner. And this market has Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. I'm not waiting for Tink Hence, man. I'm trying to win now. And my job, if I'm John Mozeliak, is to find the next Tink Hence in this year's draft.
Yeah.
When you're drafting in the top 5, go get the next dude that you think could be here even quicker than Tink Hence can. My job is to make sure that TK Roby ends up being as good or better than Tink Hence is. That's where you end up being able to restock your pitching prospects. But am I stopping my ability to go out there and get a front-end starting pitcher because I'm afraid that Tink Hence is coming back to bite me? No, I can't operate that way. I've got to be able to replace the guys that I trade for what I need right now.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, too. Like, for every guy that you're giving up in this hypothetical trade, you've got somebody who replaces them. Like, you've got Tink Hence in the trade. You've got TK Roby, who's expected to be somebody with that high ilk. You're giving up a Gordon Graceffo. You got Michael McGreevy everybody was super excited about. And honestly, I don't care about Thomas Saggese. You didn't even have Saggese before you traded for him, and who knows where this guy's going to play. If Nolan Gorman's here, if Brendan Donovan's here, if Tommy Edmonds in your outfield, you don't have a spot for Thomas Saggese. You don't need another bench bat or
the most likely outcome for the next few years is that he's a utility infielder for you.
And you know what's great when you have these guys in your system? They're pieces that you can trade for something that you have deficits. That's what all the great teams do. When they have a bulk of one area and they're weak in one area, they say, well, let's trade our bulk and get better in the area we're weak at.
Look at the Dodgers. Look at what they just did. They just traded a guy who I think is probably going to be a mid-rotation starter in Ryan Pepio from their rotation to the Rays. Why? Because we got Tyler Glass now. Like, why do we need Pepio when we've got Tyler Glass now for the next 5 years?
And they locked him up.
Exactly. That's what I think the Cardinals should do with the starter that they go out there and acquire if they only have a year or two of control remaining. If you look at what the Phillies have done in previous years, they go out there and they make the moves that are necessary, right? They go get the talent that is available to them. Like, that's where the Cardinals should be at right now. The Cardinals should be at a place where they are pushing to try to get the guy that unlocks the rest of this roster. The other thing that I think is so important to take into account here is everything else in your rotation starts to make so much more sense once you get that number 1 or number 2 starter in there. If you've got pitcher X, whoever that guy is, Valdez, Luzardo, Dylan Cease, whoever, right? And then you go Sonny Gray, and then you go Miles Michaelis, and then you go Kyle Gibson, and then you go Lance Lynn. Dude, that is a contending rotation. What you have right now is a rotation that can win the division. What you have if you go get that one other starter to put at the front end, now you've got a team that can contend. It's like going through a lineup in the NHL and not having a number 1 defenseman. Good luck. You can't win that way. Greg Button has told us that a number of times. Like, once you let Alex Pietrangelo walk, you're always trying to find the next Alex Pietrangelo. If you don't have a number 1 goalie, you're always trying to find that guy. If you don't have a quarterback, well, that receiver that you have doesn't matter because he ain't getting the ball. So that's where the Cardinals are at right now. They don't have the one thing that you need in order to win in October. So, yeah, if I got to trade prospects to get it, I'm willing to do that. The thing that stops me is trading Nolan Gorman or potentially Brendan Donovan. That's what would scare me. Yeah. Because I know those guys are good at the major league.
And the only reason I say trade Nolan Gorman is for Logan Gilbert, because look at the years of control you have of a young, cheap, top starting pitcher. That's where the Nolan Gorman comes into the conversation.
I say all of that, and then I will add this as my disclaimer at the end. I do think this is too much for Dylan Cease. Like, would I want to make this deal? No. If I'm the Cardinals and that's what's presented to me, my initial reaction is no. Well, if they say, hey, we've got our final offer from another team and the only way you can beat it is by making this trade, I probably end up saying yes.
You know
my
how
initial reaction would be no.
You know how you don't give up trades like this and feel like you're giving up too much for one thing? You draft and develop better. Yeah. And the Cardinals aren't good at it, so you're going to have to do something.
Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, was it always inevitable that this was going to be the way that things ended for the Kansas City Chiefs? We'll talk about it coming up here in just a little bit.
Yes.
But coming up next, let's dive into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN.
picture. The real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The junk drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
Alongside Alex and Bradford, I'm BK. Let's dive into the junk drawer in about 30 minutes or so. We will talk with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, here on 101 ESPN, as we do each and every Wednesday. Alex, I have begun the preparation for a development that we're going to be doing at our house next year, in which we will be finishing our basement. Uh-oh. And I've started doing a little bit of research into what this undertaking is going to be. And I'm not totally sure that I'm prepared for this, if I'm going to be honest with you. So my dad does a lot of this stuff for a living, right? He goes in and he has people that are investors. They go in and buy homes. He goes in and does all of the work.
So he kind of flips homes.
He's a contractor. He's a contractor for the people that are the angel investors. They go buy the homes. He does all the work on them. So he's going to be doing the majority of the actual work. I don't think I realized how much work this entails. So we're doing new flooring, we're putting up the walls, we're doing a new ceiling. Like, it's partially finished as is, but the flooring's bad. I mean, the house is built in like 1965. It's time for some renovations downstairs. Have you done anything like this?
Yeah. So
if so, what was your experience?
So our first house we lived in, we wanted, like, the basement was just like a dungeon. Like, it was asbestos flooring and ceiling. It was cement walls. It was a dungeon. And we wanted to have a basement. And so we weren't going to be able to do anything with the asbestos flooring or ceiling. So that was what it was. And the cement walls, you can't really do much because you put drywall up over those. Well, that's going to be more of a problem. So all we did was we put flooring down to make it a little bit more, like, livable. And it made a massive difference. Yeah. But then we had our flooding problem and had to take the floor back up, and I'm so happy we didn't have the drywall. So, like, that was our first house. We just did the bare minimum with it because it's like, whatever, we can live in it. It's got the walls, it's got the ceiling, we'll be fine. Our next house, we wanted to make sure we had a basement, and we just lucked out that it was finished. My brother-in-law just did a complete overhaul of his basement, just finished it himself. It took him like 8 months.
Oh.
It took him a long time.
Now, I was thinking like a week.
Oh, God.
Take off a week. We'll be able to do it together.
Your dad's a contractor,
right?
So you might be able to. He's not a contractor. He just, like, does it himself.
Did he just do, like, a job a day kind of thing?
Pretty much. He did the drywall. He did the baseboards. He did the carpet. He did the ceilings. It was a lot. Now, his basement was bigger, so there was a lot more to it. But, yeah, it took him a lot. This isn't like take a week off and be like, all right, new basement. This took him forever. And then he had flooding problems. So make sure you don't have flooding problems.
Somebody said this needs to be a docuseries that ends up becoming available on the YouTube page. We'll see. I feel like that's one of those where, like, you got to find out what the ending is first before you release it.
And how much illegal stuff are you going to be doing in your basement, too? Like, well, these wires can go here.
So everything's already wired. Like, that's the thing that's nice.
You don't have to do any of that. Like, lights up or two?
Lights are ready to go.
Well,
like,
that shouldn't take you too long.
Most of it is good to go, but we got to, like, one thing that we have to decide is how much are we leaving in and how much are we tearing down.
What do you mean?
So, like, we have to put in new flooring for sure. That's got to be.
So, are you like going are you going carpet or are you going like hardwood?
We're going LVT.
Okay, so the simple stuff. So that shouldn't take very long.
Sure, I did that in Luca's room. Like, I know how to do.
We did our basement in a night.
Sure. The walls are the thing that we've got to figure out.
Drywall takes a lot.
There's holes in some of the walls that are downstairs because the drywall is there in a portion of it, but we do have the concrete slab as the outer rim, and we got to decide, okay, are we going to go ahead and insulate this? Are we doing that, or are we just leaving those up and painting over it? It's just a lot of decisions, man. A lot of big decisions that I don't know if I'm fully prepared to make.
From my understanding with this, and again, I am nowhere near a expert on this, but my understanding is you're best to start fresh. So, like, if some walls you're not sure if they should be up, just take them all down and start fresh. Because you working around certain walls that you're like, this one's fine, it's going to be more of a disaster and more time-consuming than it would be if just fresh drywall from one side to the other.
All right. So what you're saying is just go for it.
What I'm saying is you better not
down and tear it to the studs.
What I'm saying is you better not use all of your vacation days before you start this project because you're probably going to need to use a lot of those when you start.
All right. I think 9 days. I think if we did, like, we started out on a Saturday, I take off the following week, and we're done by the next Sunday. I think we can get it done.
You and your dad, yes.
I think we can get it done.
Yeah, I think
just
your dad.
me. Even if it's just me.
No,
I think
no, no, God, no. No, 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 no. God, no. No, no.
Somebody said, I finished an unfinished basement several years ago. What a project. I did all of the work for roughly 1,800 square feet from scratch. It took me 2 years by doing it over weekends and nights. I had zero experience.
Hey, props to you, 618, because zero experience to do all of that, which 2 years, I mean, my God, man, but props to you because I always want to do stuff like that, but I know I'm not talented enough.
I've watched some YouTube series.
Me too, man. Me too, man. And you know what? I took floor out of our bathroom and laid new tile floor down, and I felt like I should start my own home improvement show after doing that. We can do it
together. We'll start the Pistachios and Mustachios show, and
that's a podcast that you ished on. So no, you're not allowed to be a part of.
We'll do it together.
Mike Ryder's a part of my Pistachios and Mustachios now.
He's Alex. That's Bradford. I'm BK. Coming up in about 30 minutes or so, the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, will join us here on the show. But next, was it always inevitable that this was coming for the Kansas City Chiefs? When you look back historically at some of the teams that were in similar spots to them, I think the answer might be yes, even though it hurts. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Ultra podcast at tmastl.com. Brought to you by Michelob Ultra.
Better off-season Cards coverage can be found right here. WXOS HD1 East St. Louis, 101 ESPN. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
All right, listen. I don't want to talk about this just as much as you guys don't want to hear it from me. And I promise you, this is not me being sour grapes. We got to talk about the Chiefs. They're a story nationally. They're a story locally. We got to talk about them. And Alex, I think the common response, the reaction this week after the Chiefs lost to the Raiders, which is a fair one, is, wow, can you believe that this team has created so badly the year after they had such a great season, replacing Tyreek Hill and winning the Super Bowl? Can you believe that they've cratered this way? When the response should probably be, wow, it's amazing they had a 5-year run as great as they did and that it didn't happen sooner. Alongside Alex and Bradford, I'm BK. So I was thinking about this morning. Maybe this was inevitable because the Chiefs over the last 5 years, every single season since Patrick Mahomes took over, it became the Arrowhead Invitational for the AFC Championship game. All 5 years, they hosted the AFC Championship game. Nobody else has ever done that. The history of this game, nobody has accomplished what the Chiefs did in the first 5 years with Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. An amazing run, objectively, by them. But you look back at some of the teams that you remember for each decade. They had runs like this, and it came to an end. The 1980s, the team that I'll remember from that era is the San Francisco 49ers, right? You look at that first run that they had with Bill Walsh and Joe Montana. It was basically a 4-year stretch. They won the Super Bowl twice in that 4-year stretch, lost in the conference championship game once. And then over the next 3 years, Alex, lost in the wild card round, lost in the divisional round, lost in the divisional round, and then got it back in another 3-year stretch with Montana, won the Super Bowl, lost in the conference championship game. But there was a 3-year transition period where they went 10-6, 10-5, and 13-2, but lost in the divisional round or earlier in all 3 seasons. You go to the 90s. Team that I'll remember from the 90s is the Dallas Cowboys, right? How about them Cowboys? That's where that comes from. 92, 93, 94, 95, they went to the conference championship or won the Super Bowl all 4 seasons. 3 out of the 4 won the Super Bowl, lost in the conference championship in 1994. But the next season, 1996, go 10-6 and lose in the divisional round. The next year, they go 6-10 and miss the playoffs. It was a 4-year run for the Dallas Cowboys, the team of the 1990s. Then you look back at the early 2000s, right? We all remember that is the sustained run by the New England Patriots. Was it, though? Because they go to and win the Super Bowl in 01, 03, and 04. Missed the playoffs in 2002. Then they lose in the divisional round in 2005. That team went 10-6. Sound familiar? A little bit of a transition year there. Then they get things back. 06, go to the conference championship game. 07, undefeated regular season, go to the Super Bowl because they invested heavily in offense and said, hey, you know what? We're going to win a different way now. What has changed all of this for everybody is what the Patriots did in the 2010s. That is what is now seen as the barometer of a successful franchise, and it's completely impossible to replicate. Alex, from 2011 to 2018, the Patriots at least made the AFC Championship game every single season. 2011 all the way to 2018. Unprecedented levels of sustained success. And so what we have done is it's almost like what we saw with the San Antonio Spurs, where we're like, that is how you sustain success in the NBA. Yeah, but nobody else has done it. Look at the Patriots. That is how you sustain success in the NFL. Yeah, but nobody else has done it before or since. What we are seeing this year was always going to happen. Always. These teams go through cycles. When you have a quarterback at the front end of his career and you've got a group around him that is starting to transition. We are starting to see this team transition from the Mahomes and Kelsey iteration of the Chiefs to whatever the next version is going to be. I don't know who it is, but whatever the next version is, it's probably going to start next year. And that's what we're watching. What we're witnessing is the beginning of the end of this version of the Mahomes Chiefs. I don't think they're done. I don't think they're going away. Much like the San Francisco 49ers didn't just go away in that 3-year transitions period. They came back, they won a couple more titles. Much like the New England Patriots, they didn't go away after that first three-peat thing that they did. They came back, and they came back arguably even better, the second version of what that team was. But right now, yeah, it's going to be somebody else's run right now for a little bit. I don't know who it's going to be, but maybe it's multiple teams. This year, maybe next, I think you're going to see a transition from the Kansas City Chiefs. This was always going to happen. People are just surprised at how quickly it happened coming off of last year's team.
Yeah, and it feels like it didn't have to happen because last year's team, they made it work with certain receivers that at least you could depend on. And this year it felt like they were relying on a ton of rookies or guys that, if you squint hard enough. Here's the thing, though. How much does the salary situation impact their ability to come out of it? Because, the Patriots were so good at finding those least expensive players and get the best out of them because you had all of the money tied up in certain players that made you such a dominant team. Does this feel more like, for the Chiefs, what the Seattle Seahawks had to deal with?
No, because they were built around defense.
Yeah.
Building around defense is unsustainable. You can't do it. You can do it for like a 3 to 4 year stretch, but then it's over.
But this team's built around Patrick Mahomes' ability to throw the ball.
Yeah, and those are the best teams that have ever played in the history of the sport. If you look at the teams that had sustained success in the NFL, whatever era, it doesn't matter the era, they were built around a quarterback. Every single one of them. If you remember a team that over a 3 to 10 year stretch was dominant, the first player that you can think of from that team is probably the quarterback that went to a bunch of Super Bowls and probably won a bunch of them. So, no, I don't think that that's something that's going to hold them back. I thought you were going to go a different route of the amount of the cap that Patrick Mahomes' salary accounts for.
That's kind of what I was talking about there.
That matters because it's harder to build around that than it was when he was on a rookie deal. It's just the reality. I think what people do, though, is they say it's impossible to build around it. And I totally disagree with that. I do not believe that it's a situation where you cannot build a champion around it. They did it last year. So it can be done. It's just harder. You got to hit on your draft picks. And if you swing and miss in one offseason around a position as important as wide receiver, then this is what it looks like. And that's what happened. The Chiefs swung and missed at wide receiver in a huge way. And not enough people are talking about it. They also swung and missed at offensive tackle. Yeah. They went out this past offseason and decided we're not paying Orlando Brown Jr., which I think was the right move. I don't think he was worth the contracts that he ended up getting in Cincinnati. We're going to get Donovan Smith as a stopgap, and we're going to go out and pay Jawan Taylor. And Jawan Taylor's been bad. So when you miss as big as they did at both tackle spots and at wide receiver, you can be average to below average at one of those two things. You cannot be bad at both of them. And that's what the Chiefs have been this year.
You're exactly right about the scope of the entire offensive line, BK, because it's not just Jawan Taylor who leads the entire league in penalties. You have 3 of your linemen responsible being in the top 10 among those with the greatest number of holding penalties in the entire league. And going back to what you were saying as well about the way in which some of these contracts are constructed and the rapid drop-off. Speaking about individual performance and drop-off, you've been operating for the last few years with a pretty team-friendly deal for one Travis Kelce. You have 2 more seasons of that, and that is the one thing, the element to me for which the Chiefs perhaps were most ill-equipped to deal with the decline there. The wiggle, the acceleration, the yards after the catch. Okay, they're there, but at the same time, he's simply not the same player.
He looks old.
He got old in a hurry.
Yeah, it happens. He took a bunch of hits, and much like Rob Gronkowski, he's probably saving himself. He was hoping to save himself for the postseason, and it went. He's looking around right now, and he's like, man, I don't have my legs. I can't run the way that I used to be able to. And when you get into that spot, he looks more like Jason Witten right now than he does George Kittle.
Well, let's also remember, too, the guy came into the season injured.
Yeah.
So
he's not the same player.
You played through a ton of injuries already this season, not defending it because he does look old and different, but the guy did come into the season with wrapped up ankles.
If we're being honest, I think Patrick Mahomes has regressed. I don't think he looks as good this year. I think a lot of it is because of the weapons around him.
A couple more catches by the receivers.
Yeah. He was a part of the problem as well. So It's the tackles, it's the receivers, it's Mahomes responding to that and not playing his best either.
Sounds
it's
like a
Travis
full-blown
Kelce
rebuild.
taking a step back as well. If you go out there this offseason and you overhaul the receiver core and you get one tackle in there that can help you, they're going to be fine. They're going to be right back into the Super Bowl conversation next year, much like all these other teams that we talked about, not named the Cowboys because the Cowboys are the Cowboys. Every other team that was the team of their era, they had a sustained run, took a little bit of a break, and then came back with another version of themselves that ended up having another sustained run. I think the Chiefs will be back. Yeah. But this year, this team can't win the Super Bowl, man.
This team can't win a playoffs game.
I think they're capable of winning a game. I think they are way too flawed to win multiple games in a row against quality opponents.
I think they're going to have to get the most ideal matchup to win a playoff game.
You still get that first one at home, and it does mean something as a division winner.
The most likely matchups right now for the Chiefs in the playoffs are the Bills or the Dolphins. I think they could beat the Dolphins. I think they would be like a 1-point favorite at home in that game. It'd be a pick 'em, but I think they've got like a 50% chance to win.
I think Tyreek Hill makes Kansas City Chiefs fans regret that trade, and if that's the playoff matchup.
I will add this. I don't think there's anything Tyreek Hill can do the rest of his career that will make them regret it. They won a Super Bowl, man.
Yeah, flags
they won
fly
a Super
forever.
Bowl the next year.
You're right.
So it wasn't the Tyreek Hill trade that has led to this. It was the response after the Tyreek Hill trade of not being able to then go out and get not a replacement. You can't replace Tyreek 1-for-1, but getting somebody that can catch the ball at an upper echelon level. They just missed in a big way. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll talk to the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, about the decision tonight to go with Joel Hofer in net. Also want to get his thoughts on the first 5 games under Drew Bannister. Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, coming up at 1:30. But next, let's play a game of More Likely to Happen. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. More Likely to Happen here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my dentist, 100 West Dental. Everybody doesn't like going to the dentist, but look, it is necessary because you don't want to have more problems down the road. Sure, you've heard about, the dental issues, if you've got gum problems, bad breath and cavities and fillings. But what about, man, if you have a dentist that's not doing the due diligence, that's not doing the preventative procedure with your mouth? And you know what I'm talking about. The dentist you go to that says, open up, no cavities, you're good to go. Well, I had that dentist and lost 7 teeth, had a tumor that was missed, had to go through major surgery, a ton of medical bills. You don't need all of that stress. You need a dentist that is on top of all of this, a dentist that when you walk in the door, you know that the patient experience is the most important, and that's Dr. Pryor and his team at 100 West Dental. The preventative procedure, they're checking your gum health, your teeth health, your tongue health, all that overall mouth health, and the cosmetics taking care of you in the long run. So get on out to 100 West Dental today. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you, and you'll get $1,000 off an Invisalign package, and you're going to get the best service that you need when it comes to your dentist. Get with the best. 100 West Dental, 100westdental.com.
101 ESPN has your chance to score free tickets to Green Day on August 15th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater.
Don't wanna be an American idiot.
Green Day will be back this August with special guest Rancid for a huge show at the amphitheater. Get all the ticket details and get entered to win those free tickets for the show right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
The American dream is killing me.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. What's more likely to happen? They'll figure it out. BK and Ferrario's most likely to happen.
Alongside Alex and Bradford on BK, 314-399-9646 is the air covered service text line for more likely to happen. You give us two scenarios. We will tell you which one is more likely. Guys, more likely to fail to make it to the Super Bowl. The Ravens or the 49ers? Which one is more likely to not reach the Super Bowl? So to lose before getting there.
I'll say it's the 49ers because I don't know if there's an AFC team that can beat Baltimore. Maybe Buffalo, but man, I'm not sure about that one for how good that defense is. I think both Dallas can give San Francisco a run for their money. I think Philadelphia in a playoff game could give them a run for their money. Heck, we talked about Detroit might be able to do that if they can stop Christian McCaffrey.
You talked about that. I sure.
Well, BK didn't, but who's the real football guy around here? This guy. So I'll say it's Baltimore.
This is a tough one
Bradford,
because
if you say San Francisco, I'm turning off your mic.
No, quite literally, I am going to play into the wild card element here because I trust San Francisco on both sides of the football more, and I think the 49ers have been markedly better than the Eagles. I don't envision San Francisco not making it to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, whereas I still do not distinctively know Lamar Jackson, when push comes to shove, is he going to be able to make the progressions, go through everything, and when he isn't allowed to purely improvise, can he potentially, yes, home field advantage aside, can he take the Ravens to the promised land? I need to officially see it. I wouldn't be surprised if a surprise team, wild card style, were to knock off the Ravens. I just trust the Niners more. I do.
I'm with Bradford.
You both shut your mics off. You don't know football.
Alex, they lost this year to Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, and the Cleveland Browns.
Those are all at the beginning of the season.
They lost to the Browns on November 12th.
That was a fluke.
It's nearly Thanksgiving, man.
That was the fluke.
I love Zay Flowers. Who else is going to make plays down the field?
Isaiah Likely.
They went to overtime against the Rams 2 weeks ago. They were amazing this week against the 49ers. And it should not be a shock to anybody if they end up in the Super Bowl. They are the favorite right now for a reason to get out of the AFC. But would it surprise me if they lose against Miami or Cleveland or Buffalo? No. Absolutely not. It shouldn't surprise anybody. So, hell, Cleveland beat them recently.
You watch.
I don't know, man.
Baltimore is going to be too good at that time of the season.
I have a hard time seeing how the 49ers lose against any of these schmokes in the NFC. I don't. It would not surprise me if the Baltimore Ravens find a way to lose. Alex, what do you got?
Ooh. More likely to happen. Jimmy Snuggerud or Zachary Bolduc score a goal this season for the Blues?
Snuggerud. For sure. Like, no, not even a hesitation in my voice.
I don't think Bolduc gets a game at the NHL level this year. From the way that Kerb's made it sound, Doug Armstrong is perfectly content on keeping both of those kids in the minor leagues. I mean, we haven't seen a sniff of those two to call up yet. And, I mean, before they get a call up, you're going to give Gaudette or Walker an opportunity for how they've played. I truly think Snuggerud is going to be playing in the top six role when his season ends with the University of Minnesota. So, yeah, I'm with you. I say Snuggerud.
Make it unanimous. This one seems like a slam dunk. I, too, will go with Snugs, as you affectionately called him.
By the way, I would also add this. Somebody on our text line earlier said, guys, you can't bring up Jimmy Snuggerud or Bolduc if they're not playing in a top 9 capacity. There's a spot for them in the top 9.
They did it with Neighbors last year.
Also, you don't have to put them on your fourth line.
Yeah.
You don't need Jimmy Snuggerud to play there because you're not overstocked with guys that are in your top 9. Alexei Toropchenko is playing every night right now in your top 9.
I was going to say, give me a name of somebody who deserves to play in the top 9 over Snuggerud or Bolduc.
Just move Toropchenko back down to the fourth line, which is going to be his long-term role. and you can put him in the top 9. There is not a lack of opportunity here at the NHL level. It's just a matter of if he's ready for it or not. And based on everybody's account, it seems like he is.
I think the World Juniors are going to show you if he's ready, because you're showcasing that you're better than all of the other players at your age level, and that's the biggest sign for a front office to say he's ready for the next level.
Guys, last night, Kansas picked up its 9th victory of the season, knocking off Barry Odom and UNLV. I want to spin it forward to 2024. Different conferences. Let's take into account the Jayhawks, and let's also look at another team playing tonight. We mentioned near the very beginning of the show, Louisville facing off against USC. Next year, more likely to happen, Kansas and a reconfigured Big 12 gets to 9 victories again, or Louisville in a depleted ACC reaches double digits. What do you think?
KU's bringing back a lot of their talent. Their running back decided he's going to be coming back next season. I thought you were going to ask about USC. I think it's more likely that KU gets to 9 wins than USC gets to 9 wins in the Big Ten next year.
Sure, go that way.
Louisville, I haven't seen what their schedule looks like next year, but I love their coach. Both of these coaches I really like. I'll say out of the 3, if I had to rank them, likelihood of getting to 9 wins next year between USC, KU, and Louisville, I'd probably go Louisville 1, KU 2, USC 3. I think USC is the least likely to get to 9 wins.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll say more likely Kansas, because if they're returning a lot of those players, I think they've made significant improvements. Now, who knows when it's the realigned, the conference, but I'll go with Kansas here.
And next year, you actually hope to be able to utilize Daniels at quarterback in Lawrence. Keep in mind, he was the preseason Offensive Player of the Year for the Big 12, didn't even register.
Louisville's schedule next year, for those curious: Austin Peay, Jackson State, 2 barn burners early on in the year. Notre Dame, Kentucky, Boston College. They got Clemson on the road. Yeah, they could get to 9. So I'll stick with them as the more likely of the 2 to end up with 9 wins next year. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. More likely to happen, guys, the Cardinals re-sign Jordan Montgomery or trade for a starter at some point prior to opening day.
Say those again. Sign Montgomery, trade for a starter before opening day. Those are the 2. I thought there was another one. I'll say trade for a starter before opening day. I don't think they're re-signing Montgomery. I think Montgomery is, if you're him, you're going to go to a team that gives you the best chance to win a World Series. And I also don't think the Cardinals are going to meet that asking price. They can't afford to meet that asking price. I could see them making a trade for somebody who could fit into their budget.
Agreed.
On all counts. Yeah, the ship has sailed, and I still wouldn't put it outside of the realm of possibility for Texas to have enough wiggle room to, at the end of the day, maybe bring him back, reunite him once more with Maddox.
I also think the Yankees are going to get him because they've lost out on every starting pitcher available.
Next thing up from the 314, more likely Josh Allen wins MVP or the Bills miss the playoffs entirely.
Oh, Allen wins MVP. I don't think they're missing the playoffs. I think with the 2 games that they have the rest of the way, you got New England with this one, so that's, in my opinion, a sure victory. And then that Miami-Buffalo game, I mean, I think Buffalo can give Miami a run for its money. I haven't been overly impressed with them lately, so I'll say Josh Allen, because if he goes up there against Miami and puts up significant numbers and is the reason Buffalo wins, I think that's his clear-cut victory in the MVP rate.
Allen for MVP as well, solely because we are now giving that award decisively to the quarterback no matter what. It doesn't matter what Christian McCaffrey does. It doesn't matter if Tyreek Hill surpasses 2,200 yards through the air. We're giving it to the quarterback, and it's changing on a weekly basis. So why not Josh Allen?
So Cincinnati, the teams that are behind them, the teams that could potentially push Buffalo out of the playoffs. Cincinnati, they're at 8-7. They've got Kansas City on the road this weekend. They could totally win that game. They're a 7.5-point underdog, though. And then they're at home against Cleveland. Pittsburgh, 8-7 right now. Their 2 final games are at Seattle and at Baltimore with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. I'm eliminating them. I know they've got Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin never loses more than 8 games in a season. I'm eliminating them out of this picture. Next one up, Houston Texans. We don't know what's going on with C.J. Stroud. They're without Tank Dell the rest of the season. They just got beat badly against Cleveland. Their final 2 games, though, Tennessee and Indianapolis. And then the final one is Indy at 8-7. Vegas this weekend, Houston in the final week of the season. And oh, by the way, I probably shouldn't have left them out. Jacksonville is the one other that we could put into this conversation at 8-7. But their final 2 games, Alex, are against Carolina this weekend and on the road at Tennessee. So you really have, for the final 3 spots in the postseason: Buffalo, Cincinnati, Houston, Indy, and Jacksonville. Those 5 teams. Say all that to say this. I think it's more likely that Josh Allen ends up winning the MVP. I'd be really surprised, man. I'd be really surprised if they missed out on the playoffs entirely this year, because I think they're going to have some tiebreakers over those teams with the way that their conference record has gone this year compared to some of them. I think they end up getting in. And if they get in, and if they beat the Miami Dolphins in that final game of the regular season and Allen is awesome, that's going to be the last thing everybody remembers. It's entirely possible that that ends up giving them the number 2 seed in the AFC. And if you're telling me Josh Allen wins the final 5 games of the season against KC, Dallas, New England, Miami, and he goes scorched earth, yeah, he's going to win the MVP.
And a nice little feather in his cap down the stretch. He has been doing much of the heavy lifting without the prohibitive performances from Diggs. He's been leaning heavily on Cook, but he has been facilitating and manufacturing so much.
Diggs has only been their leading receiver once in the last 6 weeks.
He's been rushing the ball for touchdowns all season long, more than Lamar Jackson.
He's been, despite the turnovers, which is a big deal, in a normal year, he wouldn't even be in contention, because in a normal year, you've got guys that have run away with it by this point. This year, though, he's still in contention. Very much in the conversation. Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Under Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com. What jersey is Jamie Rivers giving away this week? How about a signed Justin Falk Blues jersey? Get entered to win now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app, courtesy of Twin Peaks. Eats, drinks, scenic views.
You know, folks, it's that time again. Time to hang up the stocking, string up the lights, and of course, it's time to start buying your whiskey in the big bottles, half gallons, handles, whatever you like to call them. Randall's has you covered. This week, Randall's has 2, count them, 2 half-gallon bottles of Maker's Mark for just $86, or get 2 handles of Tullamore Dew for just $60. The holidays are a time for sharing, so you'd better size up. Visit any of Randall's 4 Missouri locations today and get your holiday handles at Randall's.
Do you still have lots of leaves in your gutters from this fall? Don't clean your gutters yourself when you don't have to. Instead, call Gutter Pros and Exteriors. They offer a variety of leaf protectors at affordable rates for every situation. A free gutter cleanout is included with every purchase, saving you hundreds of dollars just there. Visit gutterpros.com to learn more and fill out a request form. Gutter Pros and Exteriors provides a no high-pressure sales approach to help you with your gutter needs. That's Gutter Pros and Exteriors, where water goes, where we tell it.
The Blues game? Want to hear the highlights? Need player reaction? Want more analysis and opinion? It's all here on Curbside Reaction, your next day post-game podcast with the voice of the St. Louis Blues, Chris Kerber. Catch new episodes of Curbside every morning after every Blues game on 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
T-minus 2 days to showdown in Big D. Good afternoon. This is Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Mizzou's afternoon practice at AT&T Stadium is underway, with the Tigers closing in on their Cotton Bowl clash against Ohio State. The wideout Theo Weiss returning to the site, having previously played there with OU in 2020. OC Kirby Moore spoke about bringing said experience to the table on the 29th.
Tremendous, right? I can't reiterate that enough. The experience that he had and success he had early and the work that he's put into it on a consistent basis, he really treats it like a true pro, and that carried over within our whole offense.
That sound comes courtesy of the Bull staff in Arlington. Hockey, the Blues host the Stars at 7. Pre-game gets rolling 1 hour earlier on 101 ESPN with Alex Ferrario and Joe Vitale taking the reins. You will hear on BK and Ferrario from the radio voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, coming up next. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplexx.com. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Bring out the Zamboni!
It's time for Curbside with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Brought to you by Scott Lee Heating Company, a proud Mitsubishi Electric Elite contractor.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. We're happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues. He's joining us as he does each and every Wednesday here on the show. Kerbs, I hope you had a happy holidays with you and yours, man. How you doing today?
BK, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing very well. So the Blues have played 5 games so far under interim head coach Drew Bannister. They are 4-1 in those 5 games. They have come back from a 2-goal deficit. They have now come back from a 3-goal deficit. They had done neither of those two things prior to Bannister's arrival. Kerbs, what's your biggest takeaway so far? I understand it's very early, only 5 games, but what's your biggest takeaway so far from how the Blues have played under Drew Bannister?
I think they've played hard. And I think even after the Tampa game, the message from Drew Bannister, to the media and obviously to his team was, look, I understand we're not going to win every game, but that doesn't mean we aren't playing hard. And he didn't like the effort and what he saw in that Tampa game. And so to me, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway so far is he's got the team kind of pointed in the right direction with their effort. And I think that has shown in a couple of come-from-behind wins.
So with those come-from-behind wins, Kerbs, we've heard a lot of Drew Bannister talk about the accountability, but a lot of that accountability comes from within that locker room. Does the fact that they just proved to themselves as a team that they have the ability to come from behind make a difference moving forward?
Yeah, the come-from-behind it really is a mentality. It shows that you can do it. Now, I did ask Drew this morning, and you'll hear it on the coaches show tonight, about it's great that you've come from behind from 2 big deficits, but I can't imagine that's the game plan moving forward. And as he put it, to have fallen that far behind was unacceptable. And I think, and guys, as you know, changing habits and changing trends and tides of momentum, it takes some time because you have to rebuild an all-around game. And so, and Alex, you've got some of those nuggets about how many times the Blues have allowed multiple goals in a short amount of time.
17 in 3 minutes or less.
Yeah, that's actually amazing. So it's the mindset and the compete of what you've got to bring next. And back to the word accountability. A coach can can bench a player. A coach can scratch a player. In the end, accountability is a personal word. This is where I've come to over the last couple of weeks with this. It's a personal word. Are you holding yourself accountable to everybody else in the room? Even look at the radio station. Are we all doing what we need to do to make the radio station better? From a Blues standpoint, is everybody working for the Blues in the front office and the ticket side doing their part to make it better? It's personal accountability. You either have it or you don't. And if you don't, you're hurting your own team, and shame on you. So I think and I hope we continue to see more of that personal accountability grow throughout the room.
Chris Kerber is the voice of the Blues. He's joining us here on 101 ESPN. The Blues will be back in action tonight after the holiday break. Alex has your pregame coverage starting at 6. Curbs will be on the call starting at 7. And in net tonight, Curbs, it's not going to be Jordan Binnington, interestingly enough. They're going to go with Joel Hofer. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. I'll just give you our quick thoughts on it, Curbs. It makes a lot of sense. 11 of the last 14 games, you've seen Jordan Binnington as the starting goalie. And I do think we've seen a little bit of overuse start to show itself with Binnington. Personally, I don't think he's been at his best. What did you make of the decision, though, to go to Joel Hofer tonight coming out of this break?
Yeah, I think coming out of this break with playing 3 games in 4 days, Jordan having played that one right before the break, practice schedules sometimes can be difficult, and I think it's always good to have some extra time for the goaltenders to go through a goalie practice with David Alexander. So I think keeping Joel sharp and with the stretch of hockey coming up is important. And what it probably tells you, in my opinion, what it clearly tells you is that the 2 out of the first 3 games here coming out of the break are going to go to Joel Hofer.
Yep.
Because I don't see them going back-to-back with Jordan with travel to Pittsburgh. So I think it's okay. I don't read anything into it other than you've got 2 goalies and one played a really good game the last time he was out in Hofer. And they're keeping him, going from a game standpoint as you've got a busy schedule. So I'm not overly surprised by this one, to be honest with you.
So speaking of that schedule, Curbs, Bannister had a really good comment earlier today talking about this part that they're going in, where I think it's 8 of the next 9 are played against top 3 opponents in their division. And he said this is going to be a tough part of our schedule. I've said this before. I think we need hard right now to see where we're at, and this is going to be a good test. What would you call a success out of this next 8-game stretch?
Well, I'll go backwards a couple of games and to when the Blues finally got home off of the road. And they have a stretch now where they've got 11 of 15 that they're in the middle of on home ice. And you're right. Most of these are against the top teams in divisions, right? So to me, success, you've been 1 or 2 games over 500 all year. If you can get over the next 8 games, if you can get so at 32 games, you're talking about the midway point of the season. If they can find a way to get the 5 games over 500 over the next 8 games, which is 3 games over 500 over that stretch, say for 5-2, that's going to be that's the mark. To me, I felt at the beginning of the season, getting to the midway point of the season, 6 to 7 games over 500 gives yourself a chance at the playoffs. I do think that by the time this stretch is done, by the time the team is heading out to Washington to take on the Capitals, you're going to have a real good idea where this team stands and how the team is, because this is a hard stretch of hockey, and you're either going to be successful or you're going to know that you're probably chasing a draft pick at that point in time. That's the way how important I see the stretch of 15 games.
Chris Kerber is the voice of the Blues. He's joining us here on 101 ESPN. Curbs, the last time that the Blues had multiple players with at least 80 points in the regular season was 1994. It's been 30 years since we've seen that. Do you think we'll see that this year?
Oh, man, I don't know that we're going to see it this year, because it means a heck of a torrid pace the rest of the way for Buchnevich and for Kyrou. Do I think we could see 3 in the 70s? Yes. 2 in the 80s? Man, I'd love to see it, because that would be really good. But that's asking for close to a point a game now, or just over a point a game the rest of the way through for those other guys. And look, point a game, 82 points in 82 seasons, guys, isn't easy. It's a hard thing to do.
There's a reason why it hasn't been done here for 30 years. There's been some good hockey teams that had 0.
I know, isn't that crazy? Like, I go back, Brandon, and I look at those numbers sometimes, and it blows my mind, because I look at teams like Pittsburgh that's had 3 of them, and some of these other teams, and Chicago and what they've done, and the Blues have had an amazing run of competitive teams without that. But in today's game, get a couple high draft picks and find a couple guys that can do it. And you know what's amazing? Look, let's play this out for just a second here. Let's just say that it does happen, right? It's Thomas and Kyrou,
sure,
for the sake of this discussion, right? You're not getting 80-point seasons out of top 10 draft picks. You'd be getting 80-point seasons out of a 25 and 24-year-old. There was a 20th overall pick and an early second-round pick. That's some doggone good drafting by the St. Louis Blues. The fact that we're even talking about it being a possibility, and then an even better move by Doug Armstrong to trade for Pavel Buchnevich when the New York Rangers thought they were in a cap spot. If those three guys can do it, man, does that say a lot, not only about them individually and the effort they put in there, but it says a heck of a lot about your hockey ops department to find that kind of talent, either by a trade or through drafting, when you're not drafting top 15 on a regular basis.
Curbs, I know this is hypothetical, and I know it's down the road because the Blues can't start negotiating with them till the offseason, but what do you think the future of Pavel Buchnevich is with the St. Louis Blues?
I hope it's a long one. You just don't, like, the key is, and again, a lot of the reason that the Blues had to part ways with some of their other players over the last year, guys, is we cannot forget the 4+ years of a flat cap and what that's done with the timing of when some guys became UFAs. With the cap going to go up, that's going to be good news. He's a fantastic teammate. He's quite funny. He, I think, is the best 200-foot player that the St. Louis Blues have in terms of adding that with the skill and point totals he can provide playing every scenario. His size, his care. He's a student of the game in so many ways. If you're in a transition now, that's great. He's one of the guys that are going to see you through it and come out of it. And I hope that he wants to stay in blue and the Blues want him for a long time because I think it's a fantastic fit.
Curbs, you've seen a lot of Blues hockey. Where's he rank among the better penalty killers that you've seen? Offensive-minded penalty killers, I should say.
Well, he's one of the best. He's so smart. He puts the pressure on at the blue line. He's forced it out, and sometimes it's knowing where your other teammates are. They give you the ability for it. Look, the same player could go. He could get 3 more shorthanded goals this year, finish with 7, and next year could be just as good of a penalty killer and get none.
Sure,
that's kind of what happens in penalty killing. But in my time with the St. Louis Blues and some of the great defensive-minded forwards from a penalty kill standpoint, he's one of the best we've had.
Shorthanded goals over the last 4 seasons for him by year. 3, 2, 0 last year, but I felt like he always got opportunities. And then 2 more this year so far. He's a monster. I absolutely love watching him on the PK. He treats it like a power play. It's so much fun. Hey, Curbs, we appreciate the time as always, man. Looking forward to you on the call tonight. Blues versus Stars back in action for St. Louis. Pregame with Alex at 6. Puck drop with Curbs coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. Enjoy, man. We'll talk with you again next week.
All right, guys, have an awesome day. Happy New Year.
You got it. Same to you. That is Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, joining us as he does each and every Wednesday here on BK and Ferrario.
How many shorthanded goals do you think leads the franchise history?
Most goals in franchise, most
by a player.
Goals. Ooh, that's a fantastic question. I do not know. I don't even have a point of reference for this, unfortunately. I'll say 12.
29.
Really? My who?
Larry Patey. So I think he is the best penalty killer in Blues franchise history.
Different era. Different era.
By the way, guess who number 2 is on this list? This is just great for people that's like, offensive players aren't good defensively. Brett Hull's got 18 of them.
That's one of those where they're down by a goal and they say, hey, Hully, go. We're already down by a goal. We got 5 minutes to play. Go out there, man.
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
Pavel Buchnevich has what, 5 in his Blues career? Or 4 in the Blues career?
4 so far. Yep.
So he's ranked 29th.
That's pretty amazing. He's been here for 3 years.
He played 167 games. The only guy that's have more goals than him in less amount of time, Derek Sanderson, who has 6 and played only 97 games with the Blues.
Yeah, since the start of the 2020 season, he has 7 shorthanded goals, which is the same as Mitch Marner, Elias Pettersson, to name a couple. There's only 7 guys in the NHL that have more shorthanded goals in that stretch than Pavel Buchnevich. By the way, number 1 on that list is Chris Kreider, my favorite NHL.
Oh, man, boy, could you imagine a penalty kill of Chris Kreider and Pavel Buchnevich?
Can you imagine? The Rangers can't because they didn't have him on it. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we'll put a bow on this with the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN has your chance to win free tickets to Parker McCollum with special guests Corey Kent and George Burge on February 10th at Chaifetz Arena. Tickets for the 2024 Bird It Down Tour are on sale now, but we've got your chance at winning free tickets for the show. Get entered to win those free tickets for Parker McCollum right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. I thought we had a really good show today, Alex. Really good stuff.
I thought I was at my best. That's what I really think. I thought I was at my best today.
If you missed any of it, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Alex, Blues back in action tonight. You'll hear it right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN, starting at 6 o'clock. And the top line is once again together. That'll be Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kyrou. Those guys are out shooting their opponents 50-22 when they're on the ice together at even strength under Drew Bannister. They have outscored the opposition 8-4 in that stretch.
Is that good?
Alex, any of those three players have the potential to get to 80 points this year. The Blues have not had multiple guys do so in the last 30 years. The reason why I bring that up, Alex, is because when you look at some of the other teams recently that have had two guys get to 80-plus points, two forwards that get to 80-plus points, there are some comparisons for what we could be watching, what we're witnessing right now with the Blues. It doesn't necessarily mean, hey, Blues are going to be a Stanley Cup contender this season, but it could be a sign of what's to come. Colorado Avalanche, 2017. They had multiple guys get to 80 points that season, lost in the first round, but it was the start of what has been a pretty sustained build since then. You go to the 2018 Florida Panthers. They had multiple guys get to 80-plus points that season. Did not get to the playoffs that year. However, they have been to the playoffs every year since, based on the performances of the players that got there, and trading one of them, including Jonathan Huberdeau.
Oh, man.
Vancouver Canucks last season, multiple players get to 80 points, missed the playoffs that year, get a new coach in. Now this season, one of the best teams in the NHL. And then finally, you look at that was the other team. So those are the teams that have done it recently, Alex. You could be adding your name to that list. We've got to see more out of that top line. They've got to continue playing the way that they have early on under Drew Bannister.
And I mean, you hate labeling one area the reason a head coach is going to survive, but that's going to be Drew Bannister's career here. If you're the long-term head coach, or at least the next permanent head coach, it's going to be off of the success of Thomas, Kyrou, and Buchnevich. And I know Kerb said that that's a lot of points for those guys to put up, but if you've clicked an untapped potential with these three of where you now realize what it's going to do to make these guys some of the greats, because look, they put up those points against Florida, who arguably is a really good defensive line to go up against with Barkov and Reinhart. So if you can do that on a consistent basis, specifically in this next 8-game stretch, well, Drew Bannister just cashed in his ticket to being the next permanent coach for the Blues.
He's Alex Ferrario. You'll hear him tonight on the pregame coverage for Blues versus Stars. Looking forward to this one. A big test for St. Louis.
Battle of the Stars.
Starting at 6 o'clock. Huge thanks to Bradford Bruns helping us out today. We'll have Grade Francis in with us tomorrow. We'll talk to you guys then. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.